When a penniless schoolteacher collapses at the gate of Montana's most feared widower during the worst blizzard in 20 years, she faces an impossible choice: freeze to death with her dignity intact, or surrender everything she believes about love and marriage to survive. What starts as a desperate bargain between strangers becomes a battle for belonging, where proving yourself worthy means risking your life, where children's loyalty must be earned in blood, and where the difference between a roof over your head and a place to call home is measured not in vows but in the courage to stand and fight when the darkness comes calling. If you stay with me until the end of this story, please hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Clara's journey travels across this world. The wind had teeth. Clara Whitmore had heard old-timers describe Montana winter storms that way, back when she'd first arrived in Coldwater 3 years ago. Fresh from her teaching certificate program in Boston, with pressed skirts and idealistic dreams. She'd smiled politely at their weathered warnings, the way educated young women smiled at superstitious local color. She wasn't smiling now. The wind didn't just bite, it devoured. It tore through the worn wool of her coat like the fabric was paper, found every gap in her gloves, every exposed inch of skin between her scarf and her collar. The snow didn't fall so much as attack horizontally, billions of tiny frozen daggers launched by a sky that had turned the color of old iron and twice as hard. Clara's feet had stopped hurting 10 minutes ago. She knew enough about frostbite to understand that wasn't good news. The road, if you could still call the invisible path beneath 3 feet of accumulating snow a road, had disappeared entirely. She was navigating by instinct now, and by the fence posts that occasionally loomed out of the white chaos like the masts of sunken ships. Somewhere ahead, if the direction she'd gotten in town were accurate, if she hadn't veered off course in the blinding storm, if she hadn't already walked past it in the whiteout, was the Hale Ranch. Her last chance. Behind her, miles back in Coldwater, was the boarding house where Mrs. Merrick had given her until noon to settle 3 months of back rent. It was nearly 4 o'clock now, though the sky was so dark it could have been midnight. Clara had watched her landlady's face close like a coffin lid when she'd admitted she couldn't pay. "I'm sorry, Miss Whitmore. Truly I am. But charity don't keep a roof over my head neither." The school had dismissed her 6 weeks ago. Budget cuts, they'd said. The town couldn't afford 2 teachers, and Mr. Brennan had seniority, a family to feed, and though nobody said it out loud, the right anatomy for the job. Never mind that Clara's students had posted the highest reading scores in the county. Never mind the letters of recommendation, the additional qualifications, the extra hours she'd volunteered. Nothing personal, Miss Whitmore. Just the way things are. She'd spent her savings making rent while searching for another position. Posted letters to every school district within 200 miles. The responses, when they came at all, were variations on the same theme. Position filled, budget constraints, try again next year. Perhaps something will open up. Her last $15 had gone to settling debts. The grocer who'd extended credit, the seamstress who'd mended her winter coat twice already, the doctor who'd treated her fever in October and never sent a bill. Clara Whitmore would freeze to death with honor, at least. She'd owe no one anything. Except now she was quite literally freezing to death, and honor felt like cold comfort indeed. The wind shrieked, a sound like 1,000 furious ghosts, and shoved her sideways. Clara staggered, went down on one knee in snow that came up to her thigh. Her carpet bag, containing everything she owned in the world that mattered, her mother's Bible, her teaching certificate, 2 changes of clothes, and a photograph of her parents on their wedding day, slipped from her frozen fingers. She grabbed for it desperately. The bag was her last connection to the life she'd lost when cholera took her parents during her 2nd year at normal school. If she lost it, she lost them all over again. Her gloved hand closed around the handle just as another gust tried to tear it away. Clara pulled it against her chest and forced herself back to her feet. Her legs shook. Her lungs burned with each breath of air so cold it felt like inhaling broken glass. Get up. Keep moving. Keep. 1 foot, then the other. The fence post she'd been following disappeared. Clara's heart lurched. Had she reached a gate? Past it? Or had the fence simply ended, leaving her wandering into open rangeland where she'd walk in circles until she collapsed? She pushed forward, squinting against the assault of snow and wind, sweeping her free arm in wide arcs like a blind woman feeling for walls. The cold was seeping deeper now, past her skin, into her bones. Her thoughts were starting to slow, to blur at the edges. She recognized this too, the drowsy, almost peaceful sensation that preceded the final shutdown of a freezing body. No, not yet. Not like this. Her reaching hand struck something solid. Clara gasped, stumbling forward, and found iron. Bars, vertical, freezing to the touch even through her gloves. A gate. Relief flooded through her, almost painful in its intensity. She'd found it. The entrance to the Hale Ranch. The gate was closed. Of course it was closed. Only a fool left gates open in weather like this, letting livestock wander off to die in the storm. Clara's frozen fingers fumbled for a latch, found it, pulled. Nothing happened. She pulled harder, desperation lending strength to muscles that were shutting down from cold. The latch was frozen solid, or locked, or her hands simply no longer had the coordination to work it. Clara wanted to scream, but even that required more energy than she had left. I came all this way. I followed the directions perfectly. I found the damned gate. I will not die here. I will not. Clara gripped the iron bars and shook them, a pathless gesture of pure frustration. Then she did the only thing left to do. She raised her voice against the howling wind and shouted, "Hello! Hello, the house! I need help! Please!" The wind swallowed her words like they were nothing. Clara sucked in another breath of razor blade air and tried again, louder, putting everything she had left into it. "Please, somebody! I'm at the gate!" Nothing. Just the endless shriek of the storm and the white void beyond the gate that could have been 50 feet or 5 miles to the house. She didn't even know if there was a house, if this was the right gate, if anyone was home, or if they'd all taken shelter in town when the storm warnings came. Clara's legs gave out. She slid down the gate until she was sitting in the snow, her back against the iron bars, her carpet bag clutched to her chest. The cold wasn't so bad now, actually, almost comfortable, like sliding into a bath or beneath heavy blankets. Her eyelids felt heavy. Just for a moment. Just rest for a moment, then try again. She let her eyes close. Somewhere in the distance, a dog was barking. Odd. The sound seemed to be getting closer, cutting through the wind. Clara's mind, drifting in the cotton wool fog that preceded unconsciousness, registered this information with detached interest. A dog meant people. A house. But she was so tired, and her body felt so heavy, and it seemed like entirely too much effort to open her eyes, and, "Christ almighty, there's someone at the gate!" The voice was male, rough, shocked. It cut through the storm, and Clara's fading consciousness like a knife. Hands grabbed her shoulders, warm hands, or at least warmer than the snow, and shook her. "Miss? Miss, can you hear me?" Clara forced her eyes open. The world was white and blurred, but there was a shape in front of her, dark against the snow. A man. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a heavy coat and a wide-brimmed hat already accumulating snow. "The gate?" Clara managed through lips that barely moved. Couldn't open. "The gate's locked." The man's voice was closer now, urgent. "What the hell are you doing out here? Where did you come from?" "Coldwater, walking, need to see Mr. Hale." "I'm Hale." Strong arms slid under her, lifting her like she weighed nothing. Clara felt herself pressed against a solid chest, heard the steady thud of a heartbeat beneath wool and flannel. "Jesus, you're frozen solid. How long have you been out here?" Clara tried to answer, but her thoughts wouldn't form into words anymore. The world tilted and swayed as Hale carried her, away from the gate, she thought, into the storm rather than toward shelter. But that couldn't be right. "Got her, Duke. Good boy. Now get in the house, go on." A dog whined, then movement again, faster now, purposeful. The wind was still shrieking, but it felt different, less direct. Clara managed to crack her eyes open and saw wooden walls on either side. A barn? No, a covered walkway of some kind, connecting. Warmth hit her like a physical blow. They'd crossed a threshold into heat and light and the sudden absence of wind. It was so shocking after the cold that Clara gasped, tried to pull away. "Easy, easy. I know it hurts. You're all right. I've got you." Hale's voice was steady, matter of fact, the tone of a man used to handling emergencies. He was moving quickly through what Clara's overwhelmed senses registered as a large room. Wooden floors, a massive fireplace, walls lined with windows, now completely obscured by driven snow. "Boys, get down here now!" Footsteps thundered from somewhere above. Two young voices, high and worried. "Pa, what's wrong?" "Who's that?" Questions later. "Ben, stoke up the fire, big logs. Sam, get every quilt from the hall closet and bring them here. Move." The boys scattered. Hale deposited Clara on something soft, a sofa, she thought, and began efficiently stripping off her frozen outer layers. Her scarf crackled as he unwound it, stiff with ice. Her gloves came off next, and Clara whimpered at the pain as blood began trying to return to her fingers. "I know," Hale said quietly. "It's going to hurt worse before it gets better. Can you tell me your name?" "Clara." The word came out as barely a whisper. "Clara Whitmore." "All right, Miss Whitmore. I'm Ethan Hale. You're safe now. These are my sons. Ben, he's 9, and Sam is 6. You picked a hell of a day for a social call." There was no anger in his voice despite the words, just a kind of grim humor. Clara's vision was starting to clear. The room was large and well-appointed, dominated by the stone fireplace where a boy, Ben, the older one, was adding logs to flames that were already crackling high. The younger boy, Sam, appeared with an armful of quilts, his eyes wide as saucers as he stared at Clara. "Is she gonna die, Pa?" "Not if I can help it." Ethan wrapped the first quilt around Clara's shoulders, then another, cocooning her in layers of warmth. "Sam, go heat water for tea. Ben, once that fire's good and hot, hang a pot of soup over it. The venison stew from yesterday." The boys moved to obey, but Clara could feel their eyes on her, curious and uncertain. She didn't blame them. She must look like something that had crawled from a snowdrift, because she essentially had. Ethan crouched in front of her, bringing his face level with hers. Clara got her first clear look at the man who'd saved her life. He was perhaps 35, with strong, weathered features that spoke of years working outdoors, dark hair touched with premature gray at the temples, eyes the color of slate, direct and assessing but not unkind, a mouth set in a firm line that suggested he didn't smile often. There was a hardness to him, a quality of compressed strength, like iron that had been forged and tested and had never broken. Not a handsome man exactly, but an arresting one. The kind of face that commanded attention not through charm but through sheer presence. "Your hands and feet," Ethan said. "Can you feel them at all?" Clara tried to wiggle her fingers. Pain shot through them, sharp and burning. She gasped. "Good." Ethan's expression didn't change. "Pain means the tissue's still alive. We need to warm them slowly. Too fast, and we could do more damage." He began unlacing her boots, practical, worn things that had seen better days. "This is going to hurt. I'm sorry." He wasn't wrong. As her feet came free of the boots and Ethan began gently massaging them through her stockings, Clara bit down on her lip hard enough to taste blood. It felt like 1,000 needles were being driven into her flesh from the inside. "Breathe through it," Ethan said calmly, his strong hands working methodically. "Tell me what brought you to my gate in the middle of a blizzard, Miss Whitmore." It was a distraction, Clara realized, something to focus on besides the pain. She tried to gather her scattered thoughts. I needed to see you. About a position." "A position?" Ethan's hands never stopped their careful work. "What kind of position?" "I heard in town that you were looking for someone to help with the boys. A governess, or—" Clara's voice trailed off. Now that she was here, warming slowly by his fire and wrapped in his quilts while his children stared at her, the plan that had seemed reasonable in her desperation felt utterly mad. What had she been thinking? That she could simply show up on a stranger's doorstep and, what, demand employment? She had no references from this town, no connections, nothing to recommend her except increasingly tattered dignity and a teaching certificate from a school 2,000 miles away. "Or?" Ethan prompted. He'd moved to her hands now, chafing them carefully between his own. His palms were calloused, warm, capable. "I'm a school teacher," Clara said quietly. "Was a school teacher. The district let me go 6 weeks ago. I've been trying to find another position, but—" She gestured helplessly. "I heard you'd lost your wife, that you were raising the boys alone. I thought perhaps you might need help." Sam, returning with a steaming cup of tea, stopped in his tracks. You knew our ma? No, sweetheart. I didn't have that privilege. I only heard. Then how do you know about her? Ben's voice came from the fireplace, sharp with something that sounded like accusation. How do you know Pa's looking for help? Ben, Ethan said warningly, mind your tongue. But Pa, now. The boy subsided, but his expression remained suspicious. Clara couldn't fault him for it. She was a stranger who'd appeared out of a blizzard, asking questions about their dead mother, seeking employment in their home. If she were 9 years old and protective of her remaining parent, she'd be suspicious too. The tea, Sam, Ethan said more gently. Bring it here. The younger boy approached cautiously and handed the cup to his father, who tested the temperature before helping Clara raise it to her lips. The liquid was hot and sweet, probably more sugar than tea, and it burned going down in the most wonderful way. Small sips, Ethan instructed. Your stomach's been cold too. Don't shock it. Clara obeyed, letting the warmth spread through her chest while Ethan continued working on her hands. The pain was gradually shifting from sharp needles to deep, throbbing aches. Progress, she supposed. You walked from cold water? Ethan asked. In this storm? It wasn't snowing when I left, just cloudy. The storm came on so fast. They do that up here? Ethan released her hands and sat back on his heels, studying her with those slate-gray eyes. You walked 7 miles through a blizzard to ask me for a job you heard I might have. Put that way, it sounded even more insane than Clara had thought. She felt her cheeks flush, whether from the fire's heat or embarrassment, she couldn't say. I had nowhere else to go, she admitted. Mrs. Merrick, my landlady, put me out this morning. I have no family, no money left, and no prospects in town. Someone mentioned you'd been struggling since your wife passed. I thought. She met his eyes, refusing to look away despite her mortification. I thought perhaps we could help each other. Ma's been gone 2 years, Sam said suddenly. Pa says she's in heaven watching over us. I'm sure she is, Clara said softly, her heart aching for the sadness in the little boy's voice. I'm very sorry for your loss. Everybody says that, Ben muttered from his position by the fire. Don't mean nothing. Ben, Ethan's voice was sharper this time. That's enough. Take your brother upstairs and work on your arithmetic lessons, both of you. But Pa, the soup, I can manage soup. Go on. The boys went, though Ben cast one last dark look over his shoulder at Clara before disappearing up a staircase at the far end of the room. Sam followed, quieter, glancing back with more curiosity than hostility. When they were alone, Ethan stood and crossed to a cabinet, returning with a blanket that he draped over Clara's feet. Then he settled into a chair across from her, elbows on his knees, studying her with an intensity that made her want to squirm. Tell me about yourself, Miss Whitmore, he said. And don't pretty it up. I want the truth. Clara took a breath. Truth, then. She had nothing left to lose. I'm 24 years old, born and raised in Boston. My parents died of cholera my second year at normal school, teacher's college. I finished my certificate using what little they'd left me, then took a position out here because it was the only offer I got. I've been in Coldwater 3 years. I'm a good teacher, Mr. Hale. My students consistently test above their grade level. I'm patient, firm when I need to be, and I genuinely love working with children. So why did they let you go? Budget cuts. That's what they said anyway. Clara's mouth twisted. The truth is, the town fathers decided one teacher was sufficient, and Mr. Brennan has a family to support. I'm single, female, and therefore more expendable. And your family? No one back east who could help? No one. My parents were only children, both of them. My grandparents are all dead. I have a cousin in Philadelphia I haven't seen in 15 years. Clara lifted her chin. I'm alone, Mr. Hale. Completely alone. Which is why I walked 7 miles through a blizzard to knock on your gate. I'm not afraid of hard work. I can teach your boys, keep house, cook, clean, whatever you need. I just need... Her voice caught. She forced herself to continue. I just need a chance. The silence stretched out, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the distant howl of the storm. Ethan's expression was unreadable. Clara felt her hope, which had flickered to life in the warmth of his home, begin to gutter out again. He was going to say no. Of course he was. Why would he hire a desperate stranger who'd showed up half frozen on his doorstep? He probably had a dozen better options. Women from town with proper references and, "I'm looking for help," Ethan said slowly. "Have been since Sarah, my wife, died. Had a housekeeper for a while, but she quit last spring, said the isolation was too much for her. Been managing on my own since then, but it's not sustainable. The boys need stability, structure, someone who can be here when I'm out with the herd or dealing with ranch business." Claire's heart began to beat faster. "I can provide that, Mr. Hale. I promise you, I can—" He held up a hand, stopping her. "Let me finish. I need help, that's true. But what I really need is someone permanent. Someone who won't leave when the first hard winter hits or when isolation starts gnawing at them. Someone who's invested in staying, in making this work." His eyes locked with hers. "A housekeeper can quit. A governess can find another position. But a wife—" Now the word hung in the air between them like something physical. Claire's mouth went dry. "I'm sorry, did you say—" "A wife," Ethan repeated flatly. "I'm not talking about romance, Miss Whitmore. I'm talking about a practical arrangement. A contract, if you will. You'd marry me, take care of my sons and my household, and in return, you'd have security, a home, food, everything you need. Separate bedrooms, no expectations of intimacy, unless both parties agree otherwise down the line. A marriage in name and legality for practical purposes." Clara stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. This man, this stranger she'd met less than an hour ago, was proposing marriage? "You're serious," she finally managed. "Completely." Ethan's expression didn't change. "I've thought about this for months, considered placing an advertisement for a mail-order bride, but I don't trust that process. Too many unknowns. Too many chances of ending up with someone who wants things I can't give." He gestured toward the storm-darkened windows. "But you walked through a blizzard to get here, Miss Whitmore. That tells me you're desperate, yes, but also that you're determined, willing to do what it takes to survive. Those are qualities I value." "Mr. Hale, I don't— This is—" Claire's thoughts were spinning. Marriage? To a man she'd just met? It was insane. It was improper. It was possibly the only option she had left. "I'm not asking for an answer right now," Ethan continued. "The storm will last through tomorrow at least, maybe longer. You'll stay here until it passes. That gives you time to think, to see what life here is really like, to meet the boys properly. At the end of it, if you want to go back to Coldwater and try your luck elsewhere, I'll take you myself and give you money to get started somewhere new. And if I stay? If you stay, we get married. Simple ceremony, witnessed and legal. You become Mrs. Hale, mother to Ben and Sam, mistress of this house. You'll work hard. Ranch life is demanding, and I won't lie about that. But you'll never be cold again, never go hungry, never wonder where you'll sleep at night. You'll have security, purpose, a place to belong." He made it sound so reasonable, so straightforward. A business transaction, neatly arranged. But Clara's hands were trembling inside the quilts, and it wasn't from the cold anymore. "Why me?" she whispered. "You don't know me at all. I know you're educated, which means you can teach my boys properly. I know you're brave or foolish enough to walk into a blizzard, which means you won't fall apart when things get hard. I know you're desperate enough to consider this offer, which means you won't be harboring romantic notions about what marriage should be." Ethan leaned forward slightly. "And I know that in the 10 minutes since you arrived, barely able to stand, you've been more concerned with reassuring my children than with your own comfort. That tells me more than any reference letter could." Claire's mind was racing, trying to find the flaw in this, the catch. But exhaustion was pulling at her, making it hard to think clearly. She'd been running on nothing but fear and determination for hours. The warmth of the fire, the softness of the sofa, the heavy quilts, they were all conspiring to drag her toward sleep. "I need time," she said. "You're right. I need to think about this." "Fair enough." Ethan stood. "Right now, you need to eat something warm and then sleep. We can talk more tomorrow, after the storm passes and you've had a chance to recover." He moved toward the fireplace where a pot was now hanging over the flames, filling the room with the rich scent of venison stew. "Do you have any questions that can't wait?" 1,000 questions crowded Clara's mind, but most of them were too large, too complex to tackle in her current state. One, however, pushed its way to the front. "Your sons," she said. "Ben especially seems protective." "They lost their mother," Ethan said quietly, ladling soup into a bowl. "Ben was 7 when Sarah died. Old enough to remember her clearly, young enough to still need her desperately. He's had a hard time with it. Both of them have, but Ben expresses it as anger sometimes." He carried the bowl to her along with a spoon. "They'd need time to adjust to you. I wouldn't expect you to replace Sarah. No one could. But they need a woman's influence, stability, someone who'll be there. And if they never accept me?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "That's not acceptable. I'm their father. What I say goes in this house. But I also believe that if you're patient, if you're genuine with them, they'll come around." He paused. "Ben's a good boy under all that anger. Smart, responsible, protective of his little brother. Sam's gentler, easier in some ways. But he still cries for his mother at night sometimes." Clara's heart squeezed. She thought of the 2 boys she'd glimpsed, one defiant, one curious, both clearly still hurting. Could she help them? Could she be what they needed? More importantly, could she afford not to try? She accepted the soup and took a careful spoonful. It was delicious, rich and savory, with chunks of tender meat and vegetables. Clara realized she hadn't eaten anything since a piece of bread that morning. Her stomach cramped with sudden hunger. "Slow down," Ethan warned, seeing her take another larger spoonful. "You'll make yourself sick." Clara forced herself to eat slowly, though everything in her wanted to devour the entire bowl. Ethan settled back into his chair, watching her with that steady, assessing gaze that made her feel like a problem he was carefully calculating how to solve. "Can I ask you a question?" Clara ventured between bites. "Go ahead." "Why a practical marriage? Why not court someone properly? Find someone you could love?" Something flickered across Ethan's face, pain, quickly suppressed. "I had love once, Miss Whitmore. Sarah and I married young, built this ranch together, raised our boys. When she died..." He stopped, jaw working. "I'm not looking to replace that. Can't be replaced. What I need now is partnership. Someone capable and reliable who understands what they're getting into. Romance just complicates things, creates expectations I can't meet." "That seems lonely," Clara said softly. "Loneliness is survivable. False hope isn't." Ethan's voice was firm. "I'm offering you honesty, Miss Whitmore. No pretty lies, no promises I can't keep. Just a fair bargain between 2 people who need what the other can provide. That's more than most marriages have." He wasn't wrong, Clara thought. She'd seen enough society marriages in Boston, arrangements made for money or status or family obligation, to know that love was often absent from the equation. At least Ethan was being upfront about it. But still, marriage without love, marriage without even the possibility of love. Could she do that? Could she tie herself legally and permanently to a stranger, raise his children, share his home and his name, all while maintaining a careful emotional distance? The alternative was going back to Coldwater with whatever charity Ethan offered, trying to find work in a town that had already rejected her, facing another winter alone and poor and uncertain. When you put it that way, the choice seemed obvious. Clara finished her soup and set the bowl aside. Her eyelids were growing heavy, her body's desperate need for rest finally overriding the shock and adrenaline that had kept her alert. "There's a guest room upstairs," Ethan said, standing. "Sam can show you. There's a bed, clean linens, everything you need. Your bag..." He gestured to where her carpet bag sat by the door, snow melting off it onto the floor. "I'll bring it up once it's dried out." "Thank you." Clara started to rise, but her legs wobbled. The ordeal of the storm, combined with the sudden warmth and food, had left her weak as a newborn foal. Ethan caught her elbow, steadying her. "Easy, you've been through hell today. Your body needs time to recover." With his help, Clara made it to the stairs. Sam appeared at the top, still watching her with those wide, curious eyes. "Can you show Miss Whitmore to the guest room, son?" "Yes, Pa." Sam hesitated, then addressed Clara directly. "Are you feeling better, miss?" "Much better, thank you," Clara managed to smile for the boy. "Your father saved my life." "Pa's good at that," Sam said with simple confidence. "He saved our calf when it got stuck in the ice last year, and he pulled Mr. Henderson out of the river when his horse spooked. And Sam, Ethan's voice held a note of gentle amusement. Maybe save the stories for tomorrow. Miss Whitmore needs to rest. Oh, right. Sam turned and led Clara down a hallway lined with closed doors. He stopped at one near the end and pushed it open. This is the guest room. Ma used to put it here when her sister visited before Aunt Rachel moved to California. The room was simple but clean. A narrow bed with a quilt, a dresser, a washstand with a pitcher and bowl. A window, currently showing nothing but white as snow plastered against the glass. It looked like paradise. "Thank you, Sam," Clara said. "It's perfect." The boy lingered in the doorway, chewing his lip. "Miss Whitmore, are you going to stay? After the storm, I mean?" Clara's breath caught. How was she supposed to answer that when she didn't know herself? "I'm not sure yet, sweetheart. Your father and I need to talk more, but I promise I'll be honest with you, whatever I decide." Sam nodded slowly. "Ben says you're just here because you got nowhere else to go, that you'll leave as soon as you can, like Miss Pritchard did." Miss Pritchard, the housekeeper who'd quit, Clara realized. Another woman who'd found the isolation too much, who'd abandoned these boys to fend for themselves. Clara knelt down, bringing herself to Sam's eye level despite the protest of her aching body. "I don't know what I'm going to do yet, Sam. But I can promise you this. I don't make promises I can't keep, and I don't leave people without warning. If I stay properly. If I go, you'll know why, and it won't be because of you or your brother, all right?" Sam studied her seriously, then nodded. "All right. Good night, Miss Whitmore." "Good night, Sam." The boy scampered off, leaving Clara alone. She shut the door and sagged against it, every muscle in her body suddenly heavy as lead. Her clothes were still damp, she realized. She should change, but the idea of undressing seemed insurmountable. A soft knock made her straighten. She opened the door to find Ethan holding her carpet bag, now thoroughly dried. "Thought you might need this," he said. "And these." He handed her a flannel nightgown, clearly well worn but clean. "It was Sarah's. Should fit you well enough." Clara accepted both items, throat tight. "Thank you. For everything. I don't know how to—" "No need," Ethan cut her off. "Get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow." He started to turn away, then paused. "Miss Whitmore, I meant what I said. No matter what you decide, you won't leave here empty-handed. You have my word on that." Before Clara could respond, he was gone, his footsteps retreating down the hall. Clara closed the door again and carried her bag to the bed. Inside were her few precious possessions, miraculously dry thanks to the oilcloth lining she'd carefully maintained. She pulled out her mother's Bible, ran her fingers over the worn leather cover. "What would you tell me to do, Mama? What's the right choice?" But her mother was 8 years dead, and Clara was on her own. She changed into the borrowed nightgown. It was too large, hanging loose on her frame, but it was soft and warm and smelled faintly of lavender from the chest where it had been stored. Clara slipped between the sheets and blew out the candle Ethan had left burning on the nightstand. In the darkness, with the storm still raging outside and the unfamiliar sounds of a strange house settling around her, Clara tried to think clearly about her situation. Ethan Hale was offering her marriage. Not love, not romance, but security. A home. A purpose. 2 children who needed a mother, whether they knew it yet or not. In return, all she had to give up was what? Her independence? She'd already lost that when the school board dismissed her. Her dignity? Was there more dignity in starving alone than in accepting a practical arrangement that could benefit everyone involved? Her dreams of love? Clara closed her eyes. She'd had dreams once, of course. What young woman didn't? She'd imagined meeting someone at a church social, courting properly, falling in love the way her parents had. A romantic proposal, a white dress, a future built on affection and mutual devotion. But she was 24 and penniless in Montana, not 18 and hopeful in Boston. Dreams were luxuries, and Clara Whitmore could no longer afford luxury. The question wasn't whether this was what she'd dreamed of. The question was whether she could live with it. Could she marry a man she didn't love? Yes, probably. People did it all the time. Could she raise children who weren't hers? She thought of Sam's curious eyes, Ben's protective anger. Yes. She'd been a teacher for 3 years. She knew how to reach children, how to earn their trust. It would take time, patience, but it was possible. Could she live on an isolated ranch, managing a household, making a life in this harsh, beautiful, unforgiving country? Clara thought about the alternative, returning to Coldwater to scrape by on charity and hope, watching doors close in her face, growing older and more desperate with each passing season. She thought about other winters, other storms, other nights wondering if she'd have a roof over her head come morning. And she thought about the solid strength of Ethan's arms carrying her from the cold, the warmth of his home, the way he'd cared for her injuries with capable hands, and then offered her not pity, but partnership. There were worse foundations on which to build a life. Sleep took her before she'd reached a final decision, pulling her down into dreams where she was still walking through the storm, still reaching for a gate she could never quite find, while behind her in the darkness something cold and hungry followed with patient, inevitable steps. She woke once in the night to the sound of crying, soft, muffled, coming from somewhere down the hall. Clara lay still, listening, her heart aching for the child. Sam, she thought, who still wept for his lost mother. After a while, she heard deeper footsteps, a door opening, a man's voice low and comforting. Ethan, going to his son. The crying quieted, gentled by whatever comfort a father could offer when no one could bring back the person they'd both lost. Clara stared at the ceiling and understood with sudden clarity what she was really being asked. Ethan didn't need a housekeeper. He could hire that. He didn't even need a governess, not really. He was clearly capable of caring for his sons himself when necessary. What he needed was someone to share the weight, someone to be there when he couldn't be, someone to hear the crying in the night and know what it meant, to care about it, to help shoulder the enormous task of raising two grieving boys into good men. He needed a partner in the truest sense, not romantic, but essential. And Clara needed exactly the same thing, not a husband in the traditional sense, but a partner. Someone who would give her the security and stability she required to rebuild her life, in exchange for the skills and dedication she could offer. When you looked at it that way, it wasn't really that strange at all. Clara turned on her side, pulled the quilt up to her chin, and let sleep take her again. Tomorrow would be soon enough for decisions. Tonight, she was simply grateful to be warm, fed, and safe. For the first time in months, that was enough. Morning came late and gray, the storm still howling around the house like a living thing that refused to be denied. Clara woke to unfamiliar sounds, the creak of floorboards overhead, the distant clang of metal on metal, voices muffled by walls and wind. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was, why the ceiling above her was rough-hewn timber instead of the water-stained plaster of Mrs. Merrick's boarding house. Then it all came flooding back. The blizzard, the gate, Ethan Hale's shocking proposal. Clara sat up slowly, her body aching in ways that had nothing to do with the cold. Every muscle protested yesterday's ordeal, the miles of walking through deep snow, the bone-deep chill, the terror of thinking she might die alone in the white emptiness. Her fingers and toes throbbed with a dull, persistent ache that told her she'd come closer to frostbite than she'd like to admit. But she was alive, warm, safe. The question was what she was going to do about it. Clara washed her face in the basin on the dresser, changed back into her own clothes, now dry and considerably worse for wear, and braided her hair into a simple plait. The mirror above the dresser showed her a pale, tired face with dark circles under hazel eyes. Not exactly the picture of a prospective bride. She squared her shoulders. There was no use dwelling on appearance. If Ethan Hale was offering marriage, it certainly wasn't for her looks. The smell of coffee and frying bacon guided her downstairs. She found the kitchen, a large, well-equipped room with a massive cast-iron stove and windows that should have offered a view of the surrounding ranch, but currently showed only white. Ethan stood at the stove, turning bacon in a skillet with practiced efficiency. He'd already been outside, Clara could tell. His hair was damp, snow melting from his shoulders, and he'd tracked wet footprints across the floor. He glanced up as she entered. "You're up. How do you feel?" "Sore," Clara admitted, "but better than I have any right to be, considering." "Coffee?" Without waiting for an answer, Ethan poured a cup from the pot on the stove and handed it to her. "Boys are doing morning chores in the barn. Storm or no storm, livestock still needs tending." Clara wrapped her hands around the warm mug, grateful for the heat. "You went out in this?" "Had to." Horses needed feeding, stalls needed mucking. Check the cattle in the near pasture. They're huddled together but holding up all right. Ethan turned back to the bacon. Welcome to ranch life, Miss Whitmore. Weather doesn't care about your comfort. Work still needs doing. There was no complaint in his tone, just statement of fact. Clara sipped her coffee and watched him work. In the morning light, Ethan Hale looked every inch the hardened rancher, solid, capable, completely at ease with the physical demands of his life. His movements were economical, nothing wasted. The efficiency of a man who'd been doing these tasks for so long they'd become second nature. Can I help? Clara asked. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You cook? I manage for myself in Boston, and I've picked up quite a bit from watching Mrs. Chen at the boarding house. I'm not fancy, but I'm competent. Fair enough. There's biscuit dough in the bowl there, needs cutting and putting in the oven, and eggs in the basket if you want to scramble some. Clara set down her coffee and got to work. They moved around the kitchen in surprisingly comfortable silence, two people familiar with the rhythms of morning preparation, even if they weren't familiar with each other. She found the biscuit cutter, shaped the dough, slid the pan into the oven that Ethan had already heated to the right temperature, cracked eggs into a bowl, whisked them with a fork, poured them into the second skillet Ethan had waiting. By the time the back door banged open and the boys tumbled in with a gust of snow and cold air, breakfast was nearly ready. Boots off, Ethan said without turning around, and hang your coats properly. Don't just drop them on the floor. Yes, Pa. Sam complied immediately, struggling with laces that had frozen stiff. Ben moved more slowly, his eyes finding Clara at the stove and narrowing slightly. You're still here, he said. It wasn't quite a question, but it wasn't friendly either. I am, Clara confirmed evenly. The storm hasn't let up. Your father kindly offered to let me stay until it's safe to travel. When will that be? Ben's tone made it clear he hoped the answer was soon. Ben, Ethan's voice held a warning. What did I say about manners? The boy's jaw set stubbornly, but he ducked his head. Sorry, Pa. They ate at a large wooden table that could have seated 10 but felt oddly intimate with just the 4 of them. Sam chattered about the horses, how the new mare had finally let him brush her mane, how the barn cat had caught 2 mice yesterday. Ben remained silent, pushing food around his plate and shooting periodic glances at Clara when he thought she wasn't looking. Ethan let the conversation flow around him, interjecting occasionally, but mostly just listening. Clara noticed how he watched his sons, the quiet assessment in his eyes, cataloging Sam's excitement and Ben's resistance, filing it all away for later consideration. After breakfast, Ethan assigned the boys their lessons: arithmetic for Ben, reading practice for Sam, and gestured for Clara to follow him to what turned out to be his study. It was a smaller room off the main living area, lined with shelves that held account books, ranch records, and a surprising number of actual books. Clara's eyes caught on titles: Shakespeare, Dickens, several volumes on animal husbandry and ranch management, a worn copy of Leaves of Grass. You're a reader, she observed. Sarah was, Ethan said quietly. These were mostly hers. I've kept up with it since she passed. Helps in the evenings when the boys are asleep and the house gets too quiet. He settled into the chair behind a scarred wooden desk. Sit. We should talk. Clara took the chair across from him, folding her hands in her lap to keep them from trembling. This was it. Decision time. I've been thinking about your offer, she began. I'd be worried if you hadn't. Ethan leaned back, studying her with that same direct gaze that missed nothing. What questions do you have? Clara had spent half the night formulating questions, trying to understand exactly what she'd be agreeing to. Now, faced with actually asking them, she felt her cheeks warm. But there was no room for false modesty here. If she was going to do this, she needed to understand the terms completely. You said separate bedrooms. Does that mean permanently? Or is this arrangement expected to become a real marriage eventually? That depends on what you mean by real, Ethan said. Legally, it would be real from the moment we say the vows. But if you're asking about conjugal relations, that's entirely up to you. I won't force myself on you, Miss Whitmore. Not now, not ever. If feelings develop over time and we both want something more, we can discuss it then. But I'm not expecting it, and I'm certainly not demanding it. The bluntness should have shocked her, but Clara found it oddly reassuring. At least he wasn't dancing around the subject. And the boys? What would you tell them about our arrangement? The truth in terms they can understand, that we're choosing to be a family together, that you'll be their mother in every way that matters, and that they owe you the same respect they'd give any parent. Ethan's expression hardened slightly. I won't have them treating you like hired help, Clara. If you take this on, you're mistress of this house. What you say goes when I'm not here, and even when I am in matters that concern the household and their upbringing. Clara's heart was beating faster now. The way he said her name, not Miss Whitmore anymore, but Clara, felt significant somehow, like he was already beginning to see her as part of his life rather than a stranger seeking shelter. What about money? Would I have any independence? Any ability to— You'd have an allowance, Ethan interrupted. Generous enough for personal needs, clothing, books, whatever you want. The ranch accounts would be joint. You'd need to understand the finances anyway if something happened to me. And I'd set up a separate account in your name, money that's yours alone. He paused. I know what it's like to have nothing, Clara. I won't put you in that position again. If this doesn't work out, if you decide to leave, you'd have enough to start over somewhere else. That's very fair. More than fair, actually. Clara had expected to be entirely dependent, to have no resources of her own. The fact that Ethan was offering her financial autonomy spoke volumes about his character. I need you to understand something, Ethan said, leaning forward. This ranch is isolated. We're 7 miles from town, and in winter we can go weeks without seeing another soul. The work is hard, and it's constant. There are no fancy parties, no society events, no culture beyond what you make yourself. If you're looking for excitement or glamour, you won't find it here. I'm not looking for excitement, Clara said quietly. I'm looking for stability, purpose, a place where I can actually make a difference instead of being shuffled aside whenever it's convenient. Something shifted in Ethan's expression. Approval, maybe, or recognition. You'd make a difference here. The boys need someone who sees them as more than obligations. Who'll fight for their education, their future. Who'll be there when they wake up from nightmares about their mother and need someone to hold them while they cry. Clara's throat tightened. You said Sam still cries for her at night. Most nights. Less than he used to, but yes. Ben won't cry, won't let himself. But he carries it differently. Gets angry, lashes out, especially at women who try to get close. He's protecting himself the only way he knows how. By pushing people away before they can leave him first, Clara murmured, understanding clicking into place. Like your housekeeper did. Exactly. Ethan's jaw tightened. Miss Pritchard was here 4 months. Seemed like she was settling in, that the boys were getting attached. Then one morning she announced she couldn't take the isolation anymore and left on the next supply wagon to town. Didn't even say goodbye to them properly. Ben hasn't trusted a woman since. Clara thought about the hostile looks, the sharp comments. No wonder Ben was suspicious of her. From his perspective, she was just another woman who'd showed up out of nowhere and would inevitably abandon them when things got difficult. I'd need time with them, she said slowly, to earn their trust, especially Ben's. I can't just demand respect and expect it to work. They've been hurt too badly for that. I know. I'm willing to be patient as long as you're genuinely trying. Ethan hesitated, then added, They're good boys, Clara. Hurt and angry and dealing with more than kids their age should have to, but good. Ben's reading is advanced for his age. Sarah started teaching him early. Sam's got a gift with animals, can gentle a skittish horse better than hands twice his age. They deserve someone who'll see their potential, not just their problems. The love in his voice when he spoke about his sons was unmistakable. Whatever else Ethan Hale was or wasn't, he was a devoted father. That counted for something. That counted for a lot, actually. If I agree to this, Clara said carefully, I need to know you'll support me when I make decisions about the household or the boys' education. I can't parent effectively if they know you'll override me whenever they complain. Within reason, you'd have full authority. If I disagree with something, we discuss it privately and come to a joint decision. But I won't undermine you in front of them. Ethan's gaze was steady. I need a partner, Clara, not a subordinate, someone I can trust to use good judgment even when I'm not here. It was the second time he'd used that word, partner. Clara was beginning to understand that for Ethan, that concept meant more than any romantic declaration could. He was offering her equality, respect, genuine authority over the shape of their shared life. How many traditional marriages offered that to women? "There's one more thing we need to discuss," Ethan said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "The ranch has enemies." Clara straightened. "What kind of enemies?" "There's a group of rustlers working this territory. They've been hitting ranches all along the valley, stealing cattle, sometimes burning buildings. Last year they killed a rancher over in Bent Creek when he tried to stop them." Ethan's expression was grim. "I've had trouble with them twice now. Lost 15 head in the spring, another 20 in the fall. They're getting bolder, more aggressive. There's talk they're trying to drive smaller operations out so they can grab land. Are you a smaller operation?" "Middle-sized. Big enough to be worth targeting, small enough that I can't afford sustained losses." Ethan paused. "I'm telling you this because it's a real danger. If you marry me, you could end up in the middle of something violent. The law out here is stretched thin, and we mostly handle our own problems. I've got hands I trust, and we're prepared to defend what's ours, but I can't guarantee your safety." Clara absorbed this information, her mind racing. She'd known ranch life would be hard, but she hadn't considered the possibility of actual danger. Cattle thieves, violence, men willing to kill to get what they wanted. "Have they ever come to the house?" she asked. "Not yet, but I won't pretend it couldn't happen." Ethan's eyes searched her face. "I need to know you can handle yourself if it comes to that you won't freeze up if there's trouble." Clara thought about walking through the blizzard yesterday, about the cold certainty that she was going to die and the absolute refusal to give in, about standing in front of a classroom of rowdy boys twice her size and maintaining order through sheer force of will. "I won't freeze," she said quietly. "I've faced down things that scared me before, Mr. Hale. I'm still here." Something like respect flickered across his face. "Ethan, if we're going to do this, you should call me Ethan." "Ethan," Clara repeated, testing the name. Skitan. It felt strange on her tongue, intimate in a way that talking about marriage contracts and cattle thieves somehow hadn't. "And you should call me Clara." "I already am." The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but close. "So, have you made a decision?" This was it, the moment where she either committed fully or walked away. Clara took a deep breath, examining her feelings one last time. Was she afraid? Yes. This was a monumental step into complete unknown territory. Did she have doubts? Absolutely. 1,000 things could go wrong with this arrangement, but underneath the fear and doubt was something else, something that felt almost like hope. The possibility of building something real, of having a purpose beyond mere survival, of belonging somewhere, to someone, even if the terms weren't traditional. "Yes," Clara said. "I have, and my answer is yes. I'll marry you." Ethan's expression didn't change dramatically, but something eased in his shoulders, a tension releasing that Clara hadn't even noticed he was carrying. "All right then," he said simply. "I'll ride into town once the storm clears and arrange things with Reverend Mitchell. We can be married within a few days." "That fast?" Clara's heart leaped into her throat. "No point in dragging it out. The longer we wait, the more the town gossips will make assumptions. Better to present them with a fait accompli." Ethan stood, moving to a filing cabinet in the corner and pulling out a folder. "There are some papers you should look over. Property deeds, financial records, my will. If you're going to be my wife, you need to understand exactly what you're stepping into." He was nothing if not thorough, Clara thought as he spread documents across the desk. For the next hour, Ethan walked her through the ranch's finances, its assets and debts, the complexities of running a cattle operation in Montana territory. Clara listened, asked questions, tried to absorb the reality of what she was taking on. The Hale Ranch was substantial, 2,000 acres of grazing land, a large herd, buildings and equipment worth considerable money. But it was also carrying debt from improvements Ethan had made after Sarah's death, and the rustling losses had cut into profits significantly. "We're not in danger of losing the place," Ethan assured her, "but another bad year or two could change that. It's why I can't afford to keep losing cattle, and why I need stability at home so I can focus on the business side of things." Clara studied the neat columns of figures, the careful accounting. You're very organized. Sarah insisted on good records, said you can't make smart decisions without good information. Ethan's voice softened. She was the practical one. I wanted to just raise cattle and leave the paperwork to someone else, but she made me see that understanding the business was part of being a good rancher. It was the most he'd said about his late wife, and Clara heard the love and loss in every word. She wondered if she was making a terrible mistake, agreeing to marry a man whose heart was buried with another woman. But then Ethan looked up, and his eyes were clear and present, focused on her and the future rather than the past. I know I can't give you romance, Clara, but I can give you honesty, respect, and a genuine partnership. That's worth something, isn't it? Yes, Clara said softly. It's worth a great deal. A crash from the other room made them both jump. They hurried out to find Sam standing over broken pieces of what had been a ceramic lamp, his face crumpling toward tears. I'm sorry, Pa. I was just trying to get my book from the shelf and I knocked it and… It's all right, son. Ethan was already crouching, checking Sam for injuries. Are you hurt? Did any of the pieces cut you? No, but Ma's lamp is just a thing. You're what matters. Ethan pulled Sam into a quick hug, then released him. Go get the broom and dustpan. Carefully, now. As Sam scurried off, Ben appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable as he took in the scene. That was Ma's favorite lamp. She brought it all the way from St. Louis. I know what it was, Ethan said quietly. Accidents happen, Ben. If Miss Pritchard was still here, she'd have kept better watch over Sam. He wouldn't have broken it if someone was supervising him properly. The implication hung in the air, that Clara, who'd been in Ethan's study instead of watching the boys, had already failed in her duties. Clara stepped forward before Ethan could respond. You're right, Ben. Sam is 6 years old and needs supervision. But you're 9, and you were supposed to be watching your brother while your father and I talked. So if we're assigning blame, perhaps we should start with you. Ben's eyes went wide with shock, then narrowed with anger. You can't talk to me like that. You're not my mother. No, I'm not, Clara agreed calmly. But if I marry your father, I will be your stepmother, and that means I will have authority over you whether you like it or not. You can choose to fight me every step of the way, or you can choose to accept that I'm here to help, not to replace your mother or take anything away from you. But either way, I'm not going anywhere. The silence was thick enough to cut. Sam returned with the broom, his eyes darting between Clara and his brother with obvious anxiety. Ethan stood very still, watching, waiting to see how this would play out. Ben's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Pa? Are you really going to marry her? Yes, Ethan said simply. I am. But why? You don't even know her. She just showed up yesterday and now suddenly she's going to be our new mother? Ben's voice cracked on the last word. It's not fair. You're right, Clara said before Ethan could respond. It's not fair. It's not fair that you lost your mother when you were so young. It's not fair that your father has to work so hard he can't always be there when you need him. It's not fair that Miss Pritchard left without saying goodbye. None of that is fair, Ben, but life isn't fair and sometimes we have to make the best of what we've got. So we're just what you've got? Because you had nowhere else to go? Ben's eyes were bright with unshed tears. You're using us. The accusation stung, probably because there was a grain of truth in it. Clara had come here out of desperation, after all. Yes, she admitted. I came here because I was desperate and I needed help. But your father came to me with a proposal that benefits all of us. He needs someone to help run this household and care for you boys. I need security and a home. And you and Sam need someone who'll be here consistently, someone you can count on. We're all using each other, if you want to put it that way, or we're all helping each other. It depends on how you choose to look at it. Ben stared at her, clearly not expecting such honesty. Sam had stopped pretending to sweep and was listening with rapt attention. How do we know you won't just leave like Miss Pritchard did? Ben demanded. How do we know you won't decide ranch life is too hard or too boring and run off? You don't know, Clara said simply. You'll have to trust that I mean what I say. But Ben, I can promise you this. I'm not afraid of hard work. I don't scare easily. And once I commit to something, I see it through. Your father is offering me a chance to build a real life here. Why would I throw that away? Miss Pritchard did. Miss Pritchard wasn't marrying your father. She was an employee who could quit whenever she wanted. I'll be family. That's different. That's permanent. Ethan finally stepped in, placing a hand on Ben's shoulder. Son, I need you to give Miss Clara a fair chance. I know you're angry and you're scared, but taking it out on her isn't going to change anything except making everyone more miserable. Can you try to be civil at least? Ben's jaw worked, emotions warring across his young face. Finally, he jerked a nod. I'll try. But I'm not calling her Ma. No one's asking you to, Clara said gently. Clara is fine. Miss Clara, Ethan corrected firmly. She's an adult, and you'll address her with respect. Ben's expression darkened again, but he didn't argue. Yes, Pa. May I be excused? Go on. Ben stalked off, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. Sam looked between Clara and his father uncertainly. It's all right, sweetheart, Clara said, crouching down to his level. I know this is all very sudden and confusing. Do you have questions you want to ask me? Sam chewed his lip. Are you really going to marry Pa? Yes, I am. Does that mean you'll live here forever? That's the plan. And you'll take care of us? I will. The best I know how. Sam considered this seriously. Will you teach us reading? Ma used to read to us every night before bed, but Pa's too tired most nights. Clara's heart squeezed. I would love to read to you and help with your lessons. That's what I'm trained for, teaching. Okay, Sam said, apparently satisfied. I think I'd like that. Can we start tonight? If your father says it's all right, absolutely. Of course it's all right, Ethan said gruffly. Now finish sweeping up that lamp, then you can help me bring in more firewood before lunch. As Sam carefully swept the broken pieces, Clara met Ethan's eyes over his head. The look they exchanged was complex, part relief that the confrontation with Ben hadn't gone worse, part acknowledgement of the challenges ahead, part something else that might have been the first fragile threads of partnership beginning to form. This was real now. In a few days, Clara would stand before a minister and pledge herself to this man, to these boys, to this life. The enormity of it pressed down on her shoulders like physical weight, but underneath the weight was also possibility. The chance to matter again, to be needed, to build something that could, with time and patience and work, become real. The storm raged for another full day and night, keeping them all trapped inside together. Clara used the time to observe, to learn the rhythms of the household, to start building tentative connections with the boys. Sam was easier. He followed her around like a curious puppy, asking endless questions about Boston, about teaching, about what she liked to read. Clara answered patiently, recognizing his chatter for what it was. A lonely child starved for female attention, trying desperately to connect. Ben remained distant, but stopped being overtly hostile. He watched her constantly, she noticed, cataloging every interaction, every decision, clearly waiting for her to prove his suspicions right by failing somehow. Clara tried not to let it bother her. Trust had to be earned, especially from a child who'd been abandoned too many times already. Ethan moved through it all with quiet competence, managing the boys, keeping the household running, checking on the livestock multiple times a day despite the brutal conditions. Clara watched him work and began to understand the kind of strength required to survive out here. Not just physical strength, though he had plenty of that, but mental toughness, the ability to just keep going when everything was hard and nothing was easy. On the second evening, after the boys were in bed, Clara and Ethan sat by the fire drinking coffee. The wind was finally starting to ease, though snow still fell in steady sheets outside the frosted windows. Storm should break by morning, Ethan said, staring into the flames. I'll ride to town tomorrow afternoon, talk to the Reverend. We could marry day after tomorrow if you're still willing. I'm willing. Clara's heart was racing, but her voice stayed steady. Have you thought about how to tell the boys? Figured I'd tell them in the morning. Give them a day to get used to the idea before it happens. And the town? People will talk. People always talk. Ethan's mouth twisted. Let them. We know the truth, that this is a practical arrangement between two adults who need what the other can offer. What the gossips make of it is their business. Clara wished she had his confidence. She could already imagine the whispers, the speculation, the penniless schoolteacher who'd trapped the wealthy widower, the shameless woman who'd barely waited for the first wife to be cold in her grave. The opportunist who'd preyed on a grieving man and his motherless children. Never mind that it was Ethan who'd proposed. Never mind that she was providing a service as much as receiving one. The town would see what it wanted to see. "You're thinking too hard," Ethan observed. "I can practically hear your mind working from here." "I'm thinking about how people will perceive this, how it might affect the boys." "The boys will be fine as long as we present a united front. As for the rest, Clara, you can't control what people think. All you can control is how you carry yourself and whether you let their opinions matter." He turned to look at her directly. "Do you care what a bunch of small-minded gossips think about you?" "I'd prefer not to be the subject of vicious rumors, if that's what you're asking." "Then don't give them ammunition. Hold your head high, treat me and the boys with obvious respect and affection, and run this household so well nobody can find fault with it. Eventually, they'll find someone else to talk about." It was practical advice, Clara supposed. Not particularly comforting, but practical. "What about you?" she asked. "Won't you face judgment for remarrying so quickly?" "I'm a man with 2 young sons and a ranch to run. Most folks will think I'm being sensible." Ethan's voice held a trace of bitterness. "Different standards for men and women, Clara. You know that as well as I do." She did. She'd lived it her entire adult life, but knowing something intellectually and experiencing it directly were 2 different things. They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire burn down. Outside, the wind finally began to quiet. The storm's fury spent at last. "I'll do my best," Clara said finally. "To be a good wife to you and a good mother to the boys. I can't promise I won't make mistakes, but I can promise I'll try." "That's all anyone can do," Ethan replied. "Try, and keep trying, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." He stood, gathering their empty cups. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Clara climbed the stairs to the guest room that would be hers for one more night. After the wedding, Ethan had explained, she'd move into the master bedroom down the hall while he took the smaller room next to it. Close enough to maintain appearances of a normal marriage, separate enough to respect their agreement. As she changed into her borrowed nightgown, Clara caught sight of herself in the mirror again. The frightened, desperate woman who'd collapsed at the gate 2 days ago was already fading, being replaced by someone harder, more determined. Tomorrow, Ethan would ride to town and set everything in motion. The day after, Clara Whitmore would cease to exist. In her place would be Clara Hale. Wife, stepmother, partner. The transformation terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Clara climbed into bed and pulled the quilts up to her chin, listening to the house settle around her. Somewhere down the hall, Ethan was checking on his sleeping sons. Further away, the cattle huddled in the barn against the last of the storm. And outside, the Montana night stretched vast and dark and endless, full of possibilities both beautiful and terrifying. In 3 days, this would be her life, her home, her family. Clara closed her eyes and tried to imagine it, waking up every morning in this house, cooking breakfast for Ethan and the boys, teaching lessons and managing the household, and slowly, painstakingly, earning Ben's trust and building something real with all of them. It seemed impossible, but then again, so had surviving yesterday's blizzard, and she'd managed that. If she could walk 7 miles through a storm that should have killed her, she could do this too. She had to. There was no other choice. The wedding was smaller and quieter than anything Clara had ever imagined for herself as a girl. No white dress, no flowers, no tearful relatives dabbing at their eyes in the pews. Just Reverend Mitchell in his modest church, Ethan in his Sunday suit that still smelled faintly of camphor from storage, and Clara in the best dress she owned, a simple gray wool that had seen her through 3 Montana winters already. The boys sat in the front pew, Sam swinging his legs and watching with wide-eyed curiosity, Ben staring at his hands with an expression Clara couldn't read. 2 ranch hands Ethan trusted, a grizzled man named Jack and his younger partner Miguel, served as witnesses, their presence a reminder that this was a legal transaction as much as anything else. "Do you, Ethan James Hale, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, as long as you both shall live?" "I do." Ethan's voice was steady, matter of fact, like he was agreeing to a business contract. Which, Clara supposed, he essentially was. And do you, Clara Ann Whitmore, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, as long as you both shall live? Clara's throat was tight. This was it. The moment that would change everything, irrevocably and permanently. She looked at Ethan's face, serious, weathered, not handsome but honest, and thought about what she was gaining. Security, purpose, a home, 2 children who needed her, whether they knew it yet or not. And what was she giving up? The possibility of romantic love, maybe. But she'd already accepted that. Dreams were luxuries, and Clara Whitmore, Clara Hale, she corrected herself, dealt in necessities now. I do, she said clearly. The ring Ethan slipped onto her finger was simple gold, warm from his pocket. It fit perfectly. He'd somehow gotten her size right, probably by judging her hand that first night when he'd been warming her frozen fingers back to life. By the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss the bride. Ethan's eyes met hers, a question in them. Clara nodded slightly. They'd agreed to make this look real to the outside world, and that meant at least the appearance of affection. The kiss was brief and chaste, his lips dry and firm against hers. No passion, no romance, but not unpleasant either. Just 2 people sealing an agreement in the traditional way. When they pulled apart, Sam was grinning. Ben's expression remained carefully neutral. Reverend Mitchell beamed at them with the satisfaction of a man who believed he'd just performed his sacred duty. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Hale. May your union be blessed with many happy years. Clara signed the marriage certificate with fingers that only trembled slightly. There. Done. Legal. She was Mrs. Ethan Hale now, for better or worse. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Ethan handled the wagon with easy competence while the boys huddled in the back under blankets, Sam chattering about how pretty Clara had looked, and wasn't it exciting to have a ma again, while Ben maintained his stoic silence. Clara sat beside her new husband and watched the white landscape roll past. The storm had left everything transformed. Trees bowed under the weight of snow, fences nearly buried, the whole world rendered into shades of white and gray under a sky that promised more weather to come. You all right? Ethan asked quietly, his voice pitched low enough that the boys wouldn't hear over the creak of the wagon and the crunch of snow under the wheels. I think so. It doesn't quite feel real yet. Give it time. Everything feels strange at first. He glanced at her. Your room's ready. I moved your things from the guest room this morning, put fresh linens on the bed. There's space in the wardrobe and the dresser for your clothes, and I cleared out Sarah's things months ago, so you don't need to worry about that. Clara appreciated his practicality, even as part of her wondered what it must have cost him to pack away his dead wife's belongings. Thank you. That was thoughtful. Just making sure you're comfortable. This is your home now, Clara. I meant what I said. You're mistress here. Don't be afraid to make changes if you want to. New curtains, different furniture arrangements, whatever makes you feel like the place is yours. The generosity of it struck her. How many men would give their new wives such authority, especially in a practical marriage like this? They reached the ranch by mid-afternoon. Ethan had barely unhitched the horses when Jack came hurrying from the barn, his weathered face creased with worry. Boss, we got trouble. Found fence cut on the north pasture this morning. Looks like we lost maybe 30 head, hard to tell with the snow covering tracks. Ethan's expression went hard as stone. Show me. Ethan, Clara started, but he was already striding toward the barn, Jack at his heels. Miguel appeared to take the wagon, tipping his hat respectfully to Clara. Congratulations on your marriage, Senora Hale. The boss, he is a good man. You will be happy here, I think. Thank you, Miguel. Clara helped the boys down from the wagon. Sam, Ben, let's get inside and warm up. Your father will join us when he can. Inside, Clara moved automatically through the motions of homemaking, stoking the fire, putting on coffee, starting dinner preparations even though her stomach was too tight with nerves to think about eating. Through the window, she could see Ethan and Jack in intense conversation by the barn, their body language tense. 30 head of cattle. That was significant. She'd learned enough about the ranch's finances to know. Another blow they couldn't really afford. Miss Clara? Sam appeared at her elbow. Is Pa angry? Not at us, sweetheart, just upset about the cattle that were stolen. Bad men took them? Sam's eyes went wide. Like the ones Pa talks about sometimes? Clara hesitated, unsure how much the boys knew about the rustling problem. Yes, like those men, but your father and the ranch hands will handle it. That's not something for you to worry about. Ma used to say that too. Ben's voice came from the doorway, flat and challenging. Right before she got sick and died. Grown-ups always say, don't worry, but bad things happen anyway. Clara turned to face him. You're right, Ben. Bad things do happen, and telling you not to worry doesn't change that. But worrying yourself sick doesn't help either. What helps is being prepared, being smart, and trusting the people who care about you to do their jobs. And what's your job? Ben asked. Cooking dinner and pretending to be our mother? My job is taking care of this household and everyone in it, including you. Whether you like it or not, whether you accept it or not, I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere. Ben's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, the door banged open and Ethan strode in, his face grim. Boys, go upstairs and work on your lessons. I need to talk to Clara alone. But Pa... Now, Ben. The boys scrambled to obey, though Ben shot one last dark look over his shoulder. When they were gone, Ethan crossed to the window and stared out at the snow-covered pastures. It's getting worse, he said quietly. This is the third hit in as many months. They're getting bolder, cutting fence in broad daylight now, instead of just taking strays. Jack thinks they might be working up to something bigger. Claire's hands stilled on the carrots she'd been chopping. What does that mean? It means they might try to drive us off the land entirely. Happened to the Hendersons last year. Rustlers kept hitting them until they couldn't sustain the losses anymore, had to sell out. Place sat empty for 6 months before a cattle company from back east bought it for pennies on the dollar. Ethan's fists clenched. I won't let that happen here. This ranch is my son's inheritance. I'll die before I let thieves steal their future. The vehemence in his voice sent a chill down Clara's spine. What are you going to do? Post more guards, ride the fence lines more regularly. I've sent word to the other ranchers. We need to work together on this, maybe organize patrols. He turned to face her. Clara, I need you to understand something. This situation could get dangerous. Those men have already killed once that we know of. If they come here, if they threaten this ranch or my family, there will be violence. Clara set down her knife carefully. Are you saying I might need to defend myself, the boys? I'm saying it's a possibility we need to prepare for. Ethan moved to a cabinet in the corner and opened it, revealing several rifles and a shotgun. Can you shoot? I've never held a gun in my life. Then that needs to change. Tomorrow I'll teach you the basics, and I'll show you where I keep the ammunition, how to load, how to aim. His eyes were deadly serious. I pray you never need to use this knowledge, but I won't leave you helpless if trouble comes. Clara stared at the weapons, fear and determination warring in her chest. She'd signed up for hard work and isolation, for raising grieving children and managing a household in difficult conditions. But this? The possibility of actual violence, of having to shoot another human being? I can see you're frightened, Ethan said more gently. That's smart. You should be. But I've also seen you walk through a blizzard that should have killed you. You're stronger than you think, Clara. I wouldn't have married you if I didn't believe that. I've never hurt anyone in my life, Clara whispered, and hopefully you never will. But if it comes down to your life or theirs, the boy's safety or a rustler's, I need to know you'll do what needs doing. Ethan crossed to her, placed his hands on her shoulders. Can you do that? If you can't, tell me now. No shame in it. But I need to know. Clara thought about Sam's bright curiosity, Ben's wounded defiance, about the home she'd just committed herself to, the family she'd agreed to protect and nurture, about standing in a classroom full of rowdy boys and refusing to back down even when they tested her, about facing down Mrs. Merrick when she'd had every right to simply give up and accept defeat. She'd survived this long by being smart and stubborn and refusing to quit. That didn't change just because the stakes had gotten higher. I can do it, she said steadily. Teach me what I need to know and I'll do whatever's necessary to protect this family. Something shifted in Ethan's expression, approval, respect, maybe the first genuine warmth she'd seen from him. His hand squeezed her shoulders briefly before releasing her. Tomorrow, then. First light, We start your lessons. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Clara rose before dawn to start breakfast, her body gradually adjusting to the demanding schedule of ranch life. After the morning meal, while Ethan and the hands rode out to check the herd and patrol the fence lines, Clara worked with the boys on their lessons. Math and reading, history and grammar, pushing them harder than the town school ever had, because she could see their potential and refused to waste it. Sam was an eager student, soaking up knowledge like a sponge and asking endless questions. Ben remained resistant but couldn't quite hide his intelligence. Clara caught him reading ahead in the history book when he thought she wasn't looking, saw how quickly he solved math problems that should have stumped a boy his age. "Your mother taught you well," Clara observed one afternoon, watching Ben work through a particularly complex arithmetic problem. "Ma was smart," Ben said without looking up. "Smarter than most of the men in town," Pa always said. "She read everything she could get her hands on." "She sounds wonderful. I wish I could have known her." Ben's pencil stilled. For a moment, Clara thought he might actually open up, might share something real about his mother instead of wielding her memory like a weapon. But then his expression shuddered again. "You didn't know her. You can't know what she was like. You're just pretending to care because Pa married you." Clara took a breath, chose her words carefully. "You're right that I didn't know her. But I'm not pretending to care, Ben. I genuinely want to understand the woman who raised you and your brother, who made such an impact on your father. Understanding her helps me understand all of you better." "Why do you need to understand us? You're just here because you needed somewhere to go." "Is that really what you think?" Clara set down the primer she'd been reviewing with Sam and gave Ben her full attention. "That I'm just using you? Aren't you? We're helping each other. That's what families do. They support one another, everyone contributing what they can. I provide teaching and household management. Your father provides security and a home. You and Sam provide purpose and a reason to build something lasting. Nobody's using anybody, Ben. We're building something together. We didn't ask for you to come here." "No, you didn't. But I'm here now and I'm not leaving. So you can spend the next 10 years fighting me and making everyone miserable, or you can accept that I'm part of this family and try to make the best of it. Your choice." Ben stared at her, clearly unused to an adult speaking to him so directly. Most people probably tiptoed around his anger, made allowances for his grief. Clara refused to do that. She could be compassionate without being a doormat. "I don't have to like you," Ben said finally. "No, you don't. But you do have to respect me and follow the rules of this house. That's non-negotiable." Sam, who'd been watching this exchange with wide eyes, suddenly piped up. "I like Miss Clara. She reads good stories before bed, and she doesn't get mad when I ask too many questions." Ben shot his little brother a look of betrayal, but Sam just smiled back innocently. The afternoon lessons with Ethan were different, harder, grimmer, focused on survival rather than knowledge. He taught Clara to load the shotgun, to brace it against her shoulder to absorb the recoil, to aim down the barrel and squeeze the trigger slowly rather than jerking it. The first time she fired, the kick nearly knocked her backward, and the noise made her ears ring despite Ethan's warning. But she steadied herself, reloaded under his patient instruction, and tried again. And again. Until her shoulder was bruised and her hands shook, but she could hit the targets he'd set up more often than not. "You're a natural," Ethan observed, surprised. "Most people flinch before they shoot. You don't." "I was too terrified the first time to flinch," Claire admitted. After that, it seemed pointless. He laughed, actually laughed, the first time she'd heard genuine amusement from him. The sound transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. Clara found herself smiling back. That's one way to approach it. Ethan took the shotgun from her, checked it was unloaded, set it aside. "But you did well. Better than I expected for someone who'd never touched a weapon before last week." Desperation is an excellent teacher. So is stubbornness. You've got plenty of both. He studied her for a moment. "You're doing well with the boys, too. Sam's reading has improved just in the week you've been working with him. And Ben, well, he's still fighting, but he's fighting less. That's progress." The praise warmed Clara more than it probably should have. She was hungry for approval, she realized, for validation that she was doing this right, that she belonged here. "He's protecting himself," Clara said. "Once he trusts that I'm not going to abandon him, things will get easier." "And how do you plan to earn that trust?" By being consistent, by showing up every day, doing what I said I'd do, proving through actions that my word means something. Clara paused. And by not trying to replace his mother. I think that's what he fears most, that accepting me means betraying her memory. Ethan nodded slowly. She was everything to them. Losing her nearly broke Ben. I don't think he'll ever fully heal from it. Maybe not, but he can learn to live with it, to build a life that includes the loss without being defined by it. Clara met Ethan's eyes. The same way you're doing. Something flickered across his face, pain, recognition, maybe gratitude that she understood. It's harder than I expected. Some days I think I'm managing fine, and then I'll see something that reminds me of her, and it's like losing her all over again. That's normal. Grief isn't linear. Clara hesitated, then added, I lost both my parents when I was 19. There are still days when something small, a scent, a phrase, a particular quality of light, brings it all rushing back. But the good days outnumber the bad ones now. Eventually it won't hurt quite so much. How long did that take? Years. I'm sorry, I know that's not what you want to hear. No, but it's honest. I appreciate that. Ethan picked up the shotgun again, his hands moving through the familiar motions of cleaning it. You know, when I proposed this arrangement, I expected it to be, harder, more awkward, but you fit here better than I thought you would. Clara felt a flush of pleasure at the words. You fit my expectations better, too. I was worried you might be harsh or cold, or... She trailed off, unsure how to finish. Cruel? Ethan supplied. That would defeat the purpose. I need a partner, not a servant I can abuse. Besides, the boys would never accept you if they saw me treating you poorly. Children learn how to treat people by watching their parents. The casual way he included her in that category, their parents, made Clara's throat tight. Parents. She was a parent now, at least legally. The weight of that responsibility settled over her shoulders. They walked back to the house together as the sun sank toward the horizon, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. Inside, Clara found Sam attempting to set the table for dinner and making a reasonable job of it, while Ben read in the corner with determined concentration. This was her life now. These people, this place, these rhythms. It wasn't what she dreamed of as a girl, but dreams were for children. Clara was building something real. She just hoped it would be strong enough to withstand whatever was coming. The attack came on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks after the wedding. Clara woke to the sound of breaking glass and men's voices shouting in the yard. For a confused moment, she thought she was dreaming, but then she heard Ethan's boots pounding down the hallway and his voice barking orders. Boys, stay in your room! Clara, get the shotgun! She was moving before conscious thought caught up, muscle memory from Ethan's training taking over. Clara grabbed the shotgun from where it hung by the bedroom door, hands shaking but steady enough to load it with shells from the box on the dresser. Then she was in the hallway, heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. Sam's door flew open, and both boys tumbled out, Sam crying and Ben trying to look brave despite the terror in his eyes. I said stay in your room, Ethan yelled from downstairs. Get back inside, Clara ordered, her voice steadier than she felt. Now. But Miss Clara, now. The boys retreated. Clara positioned herself at the top of the stairs where she could see down into the main room. Ethan was at the window, rifle in hand, peering out into the darkness. More glass shattered. Someone was throwing rocks or shooting out windows. Clara couldn't tell which. How many? She called down. At least 4 on horseback. Jack and Miguel are in the bunkhouse, but they're pinned down. Ethan fired twice in quick succession, the muzzle flash bright in the darkness. They're trying to burn the barn. Clara's blood went cold. The barn held the horses, the winter feed, equipment worth thousands of dollars. If it burned, the ranch would be crippled even if they survived the night. A man on horseback rode past the window, whooping and firing his pistol in the air. Ethan tracked him with the rifle but held his fire. The angle was wrong, too risky. Then Clara heard it, footsteps on the porch. Heavy boots. The front door shook as someone tried the handle, found it locked, and began slamming their shoulder against it. Ethan! Clara shouted. He spun from the window just as the door burst inward, lock splintering. A large man stumbled through, pistol in hand, his face covered with a bandana. His eyes swept the room, landed on Ethan, and the pistol came up. Clara didn't think. She'd spent 3 weeks learning to shoot, learning to overcome her natural hesitation, and all that training crystallized in this single moment. She raised the shotgun, braced it against her shoulder exactly the way Ethan had taught her, aimed at the man's center mass, and fired. The recoil slammed into her shoulder. The man screamed and went down, blood blooming across his leg. His pistol fired wildly, the bullet punching into the wall 6 inches from where Ethan stood. Ethan didn't hesitate. He was on the man in 3 strides, kicking the pistol away and pressing his rifle barrel to the intruder's head. "Move, and you're dead." More gunfire outside, shouting. Then Jack's voice, loud and clear. "We got 2 of them. The others are running." The whole thing had lasted maybe 3 minutes. To Clara, it felt like hours. She stood frozen at the top of the stairs, shotgun still raised, her entire body shaking with adrenaline and shock and the absolute terror of what she'd just done. She'd shot someone. Actually shot another human being. The man was writhing on the floor, clutching his bleeding leg and cursing, and it was because of her. "Clara." Ethan's voice cut through the roaring in her ears. "Clara, look at me." She dragged her eyes from the wounded man to her husband's face. "You did exactly right. You hear me? If you hadn't fired, he would have killed me. You saved my life." The words penetrated slowly. Saved his life. She'd saved Ethan's life. Behind her, a door creaked. Sam's voice, small and terrified. "Miss Clara?" Clara lowered the shotgun carefully, hands still trembling. "It's all right, boys. Stay in your room just a few more minutes. Everything's going to be all right." Jack and Miguel came bursting through the broken door, rifles ready. They took in the scene, the wounded intruder, Ethan standing over him, Clara at the top of the stairs with the shotgun, and Jack whistled low. "Well, I'll be damned. Mrs. Hale got herself one." "The others?" Ethan demanded. "2 caught, 1 dead when his horse threw him and broke his neck, and 1 got away." Jack nudged the wounded man with his boot. "This one ain't going anywhere, though. Took a good hit to the leg." Ethan hauled the man up by his collar, yanked down the bandana. Clara recognized him vaguely. She'd seen him in town once or twice, a drifter who did odd jobs. "You're going to tell me who sent you and who else is involved, or I'm going to let that leg bleed until you pass out. Understand?" The man spat blood. "Go to hell, Hale." "Already there, friend. Already there." Ethan shoved him toward Jack. "Tie him up with the others. Miguel, check the barn for damage. And someone ride to town for the sheriff." The men hauled the wounded intruder away. Ethan climbed the stairs to where Clara still stood, gently took the shotgun from her hands. "You're all right. You did well." "I shot him." Clara's voice sounded distant to her own ears. "I actually shot another person." "You defended your home and your family. Nothing to be ashamed of in that." Ethan set the shotgun aside and gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Clara, listen to me. That man came here to hurt us, maybe kill us. You stopped him. You were brave and quick, and you did exactly what needed doing. Do you understand?" Clara nodded slowly. The shaking was getting worse, her whole body beginning to react to what had just happened. "Pa?" Ben's voice, uncertain. Both boys had crept out of their room and stood in the hallway, eyes huge. "Is Miss Clara okay?" "She's fine. She's a hero." Ethan released Clara's shoulders and turned to his sons. "There were bad men here trying to hurt our family. Miss Clara protected us. She shot one of them to save my life." Sam's eyes went even wider. "Really?" "Really." Ethan looked back at Clara, something like pride in his expression. "Your stepmother is braver than most men I know." Ben was staring at Clara like he'd never seen her before. The hostility that had been his constant companion for 3 weeks was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like awe. "You saved Pa's life," he said quietly. "I did what anyone would have done," Clara managed. "No," Ben shook his head. "Miss Pritchard would have hid. She would have run away and let them hurt us. But you didn't. You stayed and you fought." Something was shifting in the boy's face, barriers crumbling that Clara had despaired of ever breaking through. She knelt down, bringing herself to his level despite the weakness in her legs. "I told you I wasn't going anywhere, Ben. I meant it. This is my home now. You and Sam are my family. I will always fight for you, no matter what." Ben's face crumpled. Then, to Clara's utter shock, he launched himself at her, wrapping his thin arms around her neck and burying his face in her shoulder. His whole body shook with sobs he'd probably been holding back for 2 years. "I'm sorry," he gasped between sobs. "I'm sorry I was so mean to you. I was scared you'd leave like Ma did, like Miss Pritchard did, and I didn't want to care about you because it hurts too much when people go away." Clara's arms came up automatically, holding him close. Her own tears were flowing now. 3 weeks of tension and effort and trying so hard to be what these children needed, finally breaking through in a flood of relief. "I know, sweetheart. I know it hurts. But I promise you, I'm not leaving. You're stuck with me now." Sam joined the embrace, wrapping his smaller arms around both of them. And then Ethan was there too, his strong arms encircling all three of them. And for the first time since this hasty marriage began, Clara felt like they might actually become a real family. When they finally pulled apart, Ben wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Can I call you Ma, or is it too soon?" Clara's heart felt too big for her chest. "You can call me whatever feels right to you. Ma, Miss Clara, or just Clara. Whatever you're comfortable with." "I think—" Ben glanced at his father, then back at Clara. "I think Ma. If that's okay, you're not the same as our first Ma, but you're still our Ma now. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." Clara smoothed his hair back from his forehead. "I would be honored." The sheriff arrived an hour later with 4 deputies. By then the intruders were secured, the barn damage assessed as minimal, and Clara had gotten the boys back to bed with promises that everything was safe now. She sat at the kitchen table while Ethan gave his statement, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her exhausted and shaky and slightly nauseous. Sheriff Morrison, a competent-looking man in his 50s, took down all the details, then turned to Clara. "Mrs. Hale, I'll need your account as well. You shot one of the intruders?" "Yes." "He broke down the door and aimed his pistol at my husband. I fired to stop him." "Clean self-defense," the sheriff said, making notes. "You did the right thing, ma'am. These men have been terrorizing the valley for months. With your testimony and the others we caught tonight, we should be able to break up their operation." "Will there be more?" Clara asked. "More attacks?" "Not from this group. We got their leader in the bunch Miguel captured, but there's always someone else waiting to try their luck." Morrison's expression was grim. "Ranch life out here is dangerous, Mrs. Hale. You showed real courage tonight." After the sheriff left with his prisoners, Clara and Ethan sat in the quiet wreckage of their home. Broken glass littered the floor. The front door hung crooked on its hinges. Bullet holes pocked the walls. "I'll get it fixed," Ethan said quietly. "All of it, good as new." "It doesn't matter," Clara gestured at the damage. "Wood and glass can be replaced. What matters is everyone's safe." "Because of you." Ethan turned to face her fully. "Clara, I need you to understand. What you did tonight changed everything. You didn't just defend the house. You proved to those boys that you're here for real, that you meant every word you said. Ben's been waiting 3 weeks for you to fail, to prove him right about people leaving. Instead, you stayed and fought. You became their mother tonight, truly." "I just did what needed doing," Clara said, echoing his own words from weeks ago. "No, you did more than that. You became part of this family." Ethan reached across the table and took her hand, the first time he'd voluntarily touched her since their chaste wedding kiss. "Thank you for being brave, for protecting my sons, for being exactly who we needed." Clara looked down at their joined hands, his rough and calloused from ranch work, hers smaller but growing stronger from weeks of household labor. Something had shifted tonight. The practical arrangement they'd entered into was transforming into something more, something built on mutual respect and shared danger and the fierce protectiveness that came from defending what mattered. "We're partners," she said softly. "That's what you wanted, isn't it? Partners who support each other, who work together." "Yes." Ethan's thumb brushed across her knuckles, an unconscious gesture that sent warmth spreading through her chest. "But I'm starting to think we might be more than that. Might become more, if we let ourselves." Clara met his eyes, saw the same uncertainty and possibility she felt reflected there. They'd married for practical reasons, with clear boundaries and no expectations beyond mutual support. But boundaries could shift. Expectations could change, and practical arrangements could, with time and patience and shared trials, transform into something genuine. Maybe, she agreed quietly. Let's see where the road takes us. Ethan squeezed her hand once, then released it and stood. For now, we should get some sleep. Tomorrow there's cleanup to do, repairs to make, and I need to ride out and check that the rest of the herd is accounted for. He paused in the doorway looking back. You really were magnificent tonight, Clara. Sarah would have been proud of you. The words, coming from him, meant more than any flowery declaration could have. Clara nodded, too overcome to speak. She climbed the stairs to her room, the master bedroom that still felt too large, too empty, designed for two people who shared more than just a house. But tonight, for the first time, it felt like hers, like home. Clara changed into her nightgown and slipped between the sheets, her body finally relaxing now that the danger had passed. Outside, she could hear the ranch settling into quiet. Jack and Miguel on patrol, making sure no other threats lurked in the darkness. The horses shifting in the barn, the endless prairie wind whistling across the snow. And down the hall, Ethan checking on his sons one last time before retiring to his own room. Her husband, her partner, the man whose life she'd saved tonight. Clara closed her eyes and let sleep take her, secure for the first time since that desperate walk through the blizzard that she'd made the right choice. This marriage might have started as a practical arrangement, but it was becoming something real, something worth fighting for. And Clara Hale, she was learning, was very good at fighting indeed. The morning after the attack dawned clear and cold, sunlight glinting off snow that bore the scars of violence. Trampled ground, dark stains, the lingering smell of gunpowder. Clara stood at the kitchen window watching Ethan and the ranch hands work to repair the barn door while the boys did their morning chores, moving with the careful deliberateness of children trying to process something frightening. Her shoulder ached where the shotgun's recoil had bruised it. Her hands were steady now, but she could still feel the ghost of that moment, the weight of the weapon, the explosion of sound, the way the intruder had gone down. She'd taken coffee to the wounded man before the sheriff hauled him away, some instinct toward mercy making her tend to the injuries she'd caused. He'd stared at her with something between hatred and grudging respect. "You got a good arm, lady," he'd muttered through gritted teeth. Most women would have missed. Clara hadn't known how to respond to that, so she'd simply walked away. Now she moved through the familiar motions of breakfast preparation, cracking eggs and frying bacon, while her mind turned over everything that had changed in one violent night. Ben had called her Ma. Ethan had held her hand and suggested they might become more than business partners. The careful walls they'd all constructed around themselves had cracked wide open, and Clara wasn't sure what would emerge from the rubble. The door opened and Sam bounded in, cheeks pink from the cold. "Ma, Pa says the fence is all fixed and only 2 chickens got scared off and we found them hiding in the hay, and can I have extra bacon because I helped catch them?" Ma. The word fell from his lips so naturally, like he'd been saying it all along instead of just since last night. Clara's throat tightened with emotion she hadn't expected. "You may have extra bacon if you wash your hands first and set the table properly," she said, managing to keep her voice steady. "Yes, Ma." Sam scampered off to the wash basin, humming tunelessly. Ben entered more quietly, his eyes finding Clara immediately. The transformation in him was remarkable. Where before he'd moved through the house like a defensive cat, all bristled wariness, now he seemed almost shy, uncertain how to navigate this new dynamic. "Morning," he said, hovering in the doorway. "Good morning, Ben. Did you finish feeding the horses?" "Yes, Ma." A pause then. "Is that okay? Calling you Ma, I mean? I know I asked last night, but maybe you changed your mind," and Clara set down the spatula and crossed to him, cupping his face in her hands the way she'd seen mothers do with their children. "It's more than okay. It's perfect." Ben's shoulders relaxed. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, "I missed having a Ma. Even when I was being mean to you, I missed it." "I know, sweetheart, and I'm honored that you're willing to give me that role." Clara smoothed his hair back. "But Ben, I need you to understand something. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to have bad days where I'm short-tempered or tired, or I make the wrong call about something. Being your Ma doesn't make me perfect." Our first Ma wasn't perfect either, Ben said seriously. She used to burn the biscuits sometimes and get real mad at Pa when he tracked mud through the house, but she loved us even when we were bad. That's what made her a good Ma. Clara's eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. Then I promise to love you even when you're bad, which, I suspect, won't be very often. Ben actually smiled, a real genuine smile that transformed his whole face. I can be pretty bad when I want to be. So can I, Clara confided. We'll just have to try to be good more often than we're bad. Ethan stamped in with Jack and Miguel, all three men bringing the smell of cold air and hard work. Clara served breakfast while the men discussed the damage assessment and security improvements. Better locks, more regular patrols, possibly hiring another hand to help with nighttime watches. Sheriff says they'll likely hang the leader, Jack reported around a mouthful of eggs. The one Miguel got. Turns out he was wanted in 3 territories for murder and theft. There's a reward and everything. Reward money goes to you and Miguel, Ethan said firmly. You two caught him. Clara and I just defended the house. With all due respect, boss, Mrs. Hale did more than just defend. She took down an armed man who had the drop on you. That's combat action right there. Jack raised his coffee cup in Clara's direction. You got sand, ma'am. More than most men I've known. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. I did what anyone would have done. No, ma'am. Most anyone would have froze up. You kept your head and acted. That's special. Miguel nodded agreement. The boys, they are lucky to have such a brave mother. Sam beamed with pride. Even Ben looked pleased, his chest puffing out slightly at this praise of his new mother. Ethan's eyes met Clara's across the table, and something passed between them. Acknowledgement, appreciation, a deepening connection that went beyond their practical arrangement. They'd faced danger together and come through it, and that shared experience had forged a bond that couldn't be unmade. After breakfast, while the boys worked on their lessons, and Ethan met with the hands to organize repairs, Clara tackled the damaged parlor. She swept up broken glass, patched bullet holes with wood filler, measured windows for new panes that would need to be ordered from town. The physical work was soothing, giving her hands something to do while her mind processed everything. She was scrubbing blood from the floorboards where the intruder had fallen when she heard a wagon approaching. Clara straightened, wiping her hands on her apron and peering out the window. A group of women from town, Mrs. Henderson, Mrs. Yates, and the doctor's wife, Mrs. Patterson, were climbing down, laden with baskets and concerned expressions. Clara's stomach tightened. She'd barely interacted with Coldwater Society women since the wedding. They'd made their opinions clear enough through meaningful looks and whispered conversations that stopped when she entered rooms. The penniless schoolteacher who'd trapped the wealthy widower. The opportunist who'd barely waited for the body to cool. But now they were on her porch, knocking firmly. Clara dried her hands, smoothed her hair, and opened the door with her chin lifted. Mrs. Hale, Mrs. Henderson said warmly, we heard about the trouble last night. We've brought food and supplies, and we wanted to make sure you and the children were all right. Clara blinked, thrown by the genuine concern in the woman's voice. That's very kind of you. Please, come in. The women filed into the damaged parlor, taking in the boarded windows and patched walls with serious expressions. Mrs. Patterson set her basket on the table and turned to Clara. Is it true you shot one of the intruders yourself? There was no point in denying what the whole valley would know by now. Yes, he was threatening my husband. I didn't have a choice. Of course you didn't, Mrs. Yates said firmly. Any woman worth her salt would have done the same. My Albert says you showed real backbone, standing your ground like that. Mrs. Henderson unpacked her basket, fresh bread, preserves, a covered dish that smelled of chicken and herbs. We wanted you to know that you're one of us now, Clara. May I call you Clara? When you defended your family and your home, you proved yourself a true ranch wife. This valley takes care of its own. The shift in attitude was dizzying. Just weeks ago, these same women had looked down their noses at her hasty marriage. Now they were embracing her as one of their own, and all it had taken was shooting a man and proving she wouldn't run when danger came. Clara didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the absurdity of it. I appreciate your support, she managed. And yes, please call me Clara. Mrs. Patterson pulled out a wrapped bundle. I brought bandages and salve, in case anyone was injured. I heard young Ben took quite a fright. The boys are resilient, Clara said. Frightened, yes, but they're coping well. Better than I expected, honestly. They have a good mother now, Mrs. Henderson said with conviction. That makes all the difference. Children can survive most anything if they have a strong woman looking after them. The conversation flowed more easily after that. The women stayed for an hour helping Clara clean, sharing valley gossip, and offering advice on everything from the best way to treat bruises from recoil to recipes that would stretch beef further during the lean months. By the time they left, Clara felt like she'd been welcomed into a sisterhood she hadn't known she needed. Ethan found her in the parlor afterward, staring at the baskets of food with a bemused expression. The town women came? They did. Apparently shooting intruders earns you social acceptance. Clara shook her head. It's ridiculous, but I'll take it. It's not ridiculous. Out here, people respect action more than words. You proved you're tough enough for this life. That matters. Ethan moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. How are you really doing, with all of it? Clara considered the question honestly. I'm still processing. Part of me feels guilty for hurting that man, even though I know it was necessary. Part of me is terrified it could happen again. But mostly, she paused, searching for words. Mostly, I feel like I've finally found where I belong. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Ethan's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. You do belong here, Clara. With us. I think I knew it that first night when you showed up half frozen at my gate, but I wasn't ready to admit it. I thought I was offering you charity, a practical solution to both our problems. But you've given us so much more than household management and teaching. You've given us a family again. Clara's heart was beating faster. The touch of his hand, the warmth in his voice, the way he was looking at her. This was different from their careful politeness, from the business arrangement they'd agreed to. This was real emotion, real connection. Ethan, I need to tell you something. The words came before she could second-guess them. When I married you, I thought I was accepting a practical arrangement. No romance, no love, just mutual survival. But these past weeks, watching you with the boys, seeing how hard you work, how fair you are, how you've supported me even when Ben was fighting every step, I've started to care about you. More than I expected. More than our agreement called for. Ethan's grip on her hand tightened. Is that a problem? I don't know. Is it? Clara met his eyes. We said this would be practical. Separate rooms, no expectations. But if my feelings are changing, if this is becoming more than what we agreed to, I need to know where you stand. I can't keep falling for you if you're going to stay emotionally distant. The vulnerability of the admission made her feel exposed, raw. But she'd learned in her teaching years that honesty, even painful honesty, was better than ambiguity. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. When Sarah died, I thought that was it for me. One great love in a lifetime, and mine was over at 33. I didn't want to love again because losing her nearly destroyed me. The boys needed me to hold it together, so I did, but inside I was hollow, empty. He turned to face her fully. Then you walked into my life, half dead from cold and desperation, and you were so damn stubborn, so determined to survive. You reminded me what strength looked like. Clara's breath caught. These weeks watching you with my sons, seeing you transform from a desperate stranger to a fierce mother, seeing you stand your ground last night and defend our family without hesitation. Clara, I've been fighting my feelings for you because I was scared. Scared of betraying Sarah's memory, scared of loving and losing again, scared of admitting I could feel this way about someone I barely know. His free hand came up to cup her cheek. But I do know you. I know you're brave and kind and stubborn as hell. I know you keep your promises and you don't run when things get hard. I know my sons love you and trust you, and I know that somewhere along the way this stopped being practical for me too. What are you saying? Clara whispered. I'm saying I'm falling for you too, maybe already fallen. I'm saying separate rooms and emotional distance aren't what I want anymore. Ethan's eyes searched hers. I'm saying if you're willing, I'd like this to be a real marriage. Not someday in the distant future, but now. Starting now. Clara's answer was to rise on her toes and kiss him, really kiss him. Not the chaste peck they'd exchanged at their wedding, but something genuine and searching and full of all the emotions she'd been trying to contain. Ethan's arms came around her immediately, pulling her close, and for several heartbeats the world narrowed to just this: the warmth of his mouth, the solid strength of his body, the way her heart raced with something that felt dangerously like joy. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes?" Clara laughed, giddy with relief and happiness and the sheer impossibility of it all. "To all of it. Real marriage, real partnership, real feelings. I want it all, Ethan." "Then it's yours." He kissed her again, softer this time, tender. "It's ours." A loud clearing of throat made them spring apart. Ben stood in the doorway, trying very hard not to grin. "Sam wants to know if you're done being mushy because he's hungry for lunch, and I told him to wait, but he says his stomach can't wait. And also, we both saw you kissing, and it's kind of gross, but also kind of nice." Clara felt her face flame. Ethan just laughed and pulled her against his side, his arm around her waist in a claiming gesture that sent warmth flooding through her. "Tell Sam we'll start lunch in 5 minutes. And Ben?" Ethan's voice softened. "You okay with this? With your ma and me being together? Ben considered this seriously. "Will you be happy? Both of you?" "I think we will," Ethan said. "If that's all right with you boys." "Then it's all right with us. You've been sad for a long time, Pa, and Ma—" He looked at Clara, something like love in his young eyes. "Ma makes things better. She makes us feel like a real family again. So yeah, it's more than all right." He scampered off before either adult could respond. Clara sagged against Ethan, overwhelmed by the generosity of that acceptance, by how far they'd all come in such a short time. "We should probably actually make lunch," she murmured. "Probably." But Ethan didn't move, just held her close for another moment. "Thank you, Clara, for taking a chance on us, for being exactly what we needed. Thank you for seeing past a desperate woman at your gate to what she could become." They worked together in the kitchen, moving in comfortable tandem now, the awkwardness that had characterized their early days gone. The boys came thundering in, full of energy and questions about when the new windows would arrive and whether they could help with the repairs, and could they please have a dog because every ranch needed a good dog. "Maybe," Ethan said, ruffling Sam's hair. "We'll see." After lunch, while the boys returned to their lessons, Ethan pulled Clara aside. "There's something we need to do, something I should have done weeks ago, but I was too caught up in the practical side of things to think about properly." He led her to the barn, to a stall where a beautiful roan mare stood, coat gleaming in the winter light filtering through the boards. "This is Dancer," Ethan said. "She was Sarah's horse, gentle, smart, good with children. I haven't been able to ride her since Sarah died, couldn't bear it, but I think it's time she had a new rider, if you want her." Clara understood the enormity of what he was offering. This wasn't just a horse, it was trust, acceptance, a symbol of moving forward rather than staying trapped in the past. "Are you sure?" she asked quietly. "I don't want to take something that's precious to you." "You're not taking, I'm giving. There's a difference." Ethan stroked the mare's nose. Sarah would want her ridden, would want her loved and used and not just standing idle. And she'd want you to have what you need to be part of this ranch, which includes your own horse. He turned to Clara. "Besides, you'll need to learn to ride if you're going to be a proper rancher's wife. Can't have you trapped at the house all the time." The practicality of the gesture was so very Ethan that Clara had to smile. But underneath it was something deeper. The recognition that she belonged here not as a guest or temporary help, but as a full partner in every aspect of ranch life. "Then I accept. Thank you, Ethan. For this, for everything." Over the following days, a new rhythm established itself. Clara's riding lessons with Dancer became a morning routine, Ethan patient and encouraging as she learned to sit properly, to guide the horse with confidence rather than fear. The boys often watched from the fence, cheering when she managed a successful canter, offering advice that was occasionally helpful and often hilarious. At night, after the boys were asleep, Clara and Ethan would sit by the fire and talk, really talk, about their pasts and hopes and fears. Ethan told her about Sarah, about their early years building the ranch together, and Clara learned to listen without jealousy because Sarah was part of what had shaped the man she was coming to love. In turn, she shared her own losses, her lonely years after her parents died, the slow erosion of her dreams until all that remained was survival. "We're both survivors," Ethan observed one evening. "Maybe that's why this works. We both know what it's like to lose everything and have to rebuild." "Maybe," Clara agreed. "Or maybe we just got lucky." "I don't believe in luck. I believe in people making choices and working hard and refusing to give up." He pulled her closer, her head resting on his shoulder. "You chose to walk through that blizzard. I chose to offer you marriage. We both chose to honor our commitment even when it was difficult. That's not luck, Clara. That's character." 3 weeks after the attack, Ethan came home from town with news. "Sheriff says the trial's set for next week. They'll need you to testify." Clara's stomach clenched. "About shooting that man?" "About defending your home. It's just a formality, clear case of self-defense. But the prosecutor wants to make sure they get convictions that'll stick." Ethan took her hand. "I'll be right there with you. You won't have to face it alone." The day of the trial, Clara dressed in her best dress and tried not to shake. The courtroom was packed with Valley residents, all curious to see the woman who'd shot an intruder. Clara took the stand with her head high, refusing to be ashamed of her actions. The prosecutor led her through the events of that night, how she'd woken to chaos, armed herself, positioned herself to protect the children. When he asked about the moment she'd fired, Clara's voice was steady. "The intruder had broken down our door and was aiming his weapon at my husband. I had perhaps 2 seconds to act. I fired to stop him from killing Ethan." "Were you frightened, Mrs. Hale?" "Terrified, but more terrified of what would happen to my family if I didn't act." The defense attorney tried to shake her testimony, suggesting she'd overreacted, that perhaps the intruder hadn't really meant to shoot, that a woman shouldn't have been armed in the first place. Clara met each insinuation with calm facts, refusing to be rattled. When she stepped down, Ethan was waiting, his eyes full of pride. Ben and Sam, who'd been allowed to attend the parts of the trial appropriate for children, rushed to her side. "You were amazing, Ma," Ben whispered, "like a real gunfighter." "I'm not a gunfighter, sweetheart. I'm just a mother who protected her family." "Same thing the way you did it," Sam said seriously. The jury deliberated for less than an hour, guilty on all counts. The intruders would hang or face long prison sentences. The Valley was safer because of it. Outside the courthouse, Mrs. Henderson approached with several other Valley women. "Clara, we're organizing a spring social at the church next month. We'd be honored if you'd help with the planning committee. We could use someone with your education and good sense." It was an olive branch, an invitation into the social fabric of the community. A year ago, even a month ago, Clara would have been excluded from such things. Now they were asking her to lead. "I'd be happy to help," Clara said warmly. On the ride home, with the boys chattering excitedly in the back of the wagon about the trial and how brave their ma had been, Ethan reached over and took Clara's hand. "You know what today was?" he asked quietly. "The trial?" "More than that. Today was the day you stopped being the desperate woman at my gate and became Clara Hale, respected member of this community. You've earned your place here, not through marriage, but through your own courage and character." Clara squeezed his hand, her heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you, without all of you." "We're a family," Ethan said simply. "That's what families do. They support each other, they fight for each other, they become more together than they could ever be apart." That night, after the boys were asleep, Clara stood at the bedroom window looking out at the snow-covered ranch. Her home. Somewhere along the way between the practical arrangement and the present moment, she'd fallen completely in love. With this land, with these children, with the quiet, strong man who'd offered her shelter and ended up giving her everything. A knock on the door made her turn. Ethan stood in the doorway, hesitant. "Can I come in?" Clara's heart raced. They'd grown closer, more affectionate, but they'd still maintained separate rooms. This felt like crossing a threshold they couldn't uncross. "Yes," she said softly. Ethan crossed to her, cupped her face in his hands. I love you, Clara. I know we didn't start with love, but we've built it anyway. And I don't want to spend another night alone when I could be with you. I love you too, Clara whispered. So much it scares me sometimes. Me too. But I'm done being scared. I'm done holding back. He kissed her gently. Stay with me tonight. Really stay. Not because of our arrangement, but because you want to. Claire's answer was to wrap her arms around his neck and kiss him with all the love and passion and hope she'd been holding back. They'd started this journey as strangers making a practical bargain, but they'd become something far more precious, partners who'd chosen each other, again and again, until choice became love and love became everything. Outside, the Montana night stretched vast and full of stars, and inside, two people who'd found each other in desperation discovered something neither had dared hope for. A love built not on romance or chance, but on trust and courage, and the quiet certainty that they'd found exactly where they belonged. Together. Spring came to Montana like a promise kept, snow melting into rushing streams that cut through the prairie, wildflowers pushing up through soil that had been frozen for months. Clara stood on the porch watching the transformation, her hand resting unconsciously on her still flat stomach, a secret she'd been carrying for 2 weeks now but hadn't yet found the courage to share. She was pregnant. The realization had come gradually, the mist monthly, the way certain smells made her queasy, the bone-deep fatigue that hit her in the afternoons. Dr. Patterson had confirmed it 3 days ago with a knowing smile and instructions to rest more, though Clara suspected rest would be a luxury she couldn't afford on a working ranch. The question was when and how to tell Ethan. They'd been truly married for 3 months now, their relationship deepening with each passing day into something stronger and sweeter than Clara had ever imagined. But a baby hadn't been part of their original agreement, and she worried how he'd react to this unexpected complication. Ma, come see. Sam came racing around the corner of the barn, his face alight with excitement. The new calves are here, and one of them is trying to stand up, and it's so wobbly and cute, and you have to come see right now. Clara laughed and let herself be pulled toward the barn, her worries temporarily forgotten in the face of Sam's infectious enthusiasm. Inside, sure enough, 3 new calves were taking their first uncertain steps, while their mothers watched with patient resignation. Ben was already there, helping Ethan check each calf for health issues. At 11 now, he'd shot up several inches over the winter and was starting to look like a younger version of his father, all gangly limbs and serious expression when he was concentrating on ranch work. This one's got a strong heartbeat, Ben reported, his hand on a spotted calf's chest. And good color. I think she's going to be a beauty, Pa. Good eye, son. Ethan straightened, his gaze finding Clara across the barn. Even after months of marriage, the sight of him still made her heart skip. The quiet strength in his frame, the weathered handsomeness of his face, the way his eyes softened when they landed on her. What do you think, Clara? Should we keep this one for breeding or sell her at market? It was a test, she knew, but a gentle one. Ethan had been teaching her the business side of ranching, training her to understand herd management and market prices and breeding decisions. He meant what he'd said about partnership. She was involved in every aspect of ranch life now, her opinion valued and sought. Keep her, Clara said, studying the calf's sturdy build and alert eyes. She's got good lines, and that coat will be valuable. Besides, we can afford to expand the breeding stock now that the rustling's stopped. Ethan's smile told her she'd made the right call. The arrest and conviction of the rustling gang had made an enormous difference. The valley was safer, and the Hale Ranch was finally profitable again, showing a surplus for the first time in 2 years. After the barn work was finished and the boys had run off to play with the new batch of puppies that the barn cat had produced, Ethan caught Clara's hand. Walk with me? They strolled together toward the creek that marked the northern boundary of the property, their hands intertwined. The water rushed high from snowmelt, carrying the sound of winter's end and spring's beginning. You've been quiet lately, Ethan observed. Something on your mind? Clara's heart hammered. This was it, the moment to tell him, to share the news that would change everything again. But fear held her tongue. What if he wasn't ready? What if the thought of another child, another responsibility, was too much? Just thinking about how much has changed, she said instead. 6 months ago, I was walking through a blizzard thinking I might die. Now I'm here, with you, with the boys, and it all feels almost too good to be real. It's real. Ethan stopped walking and turned to face her fully. Clara, I know we didn't start this marriage in the conventional way, but what we've built together is as real as anything I've ever known. You're my wife, my partner, the love of my life. Nothing about that is false or temporary. The words gave her courage. Ethan, there's something I need to tell you, something important. His expression shifted to concern. What's wrong? Are you ill? No, not ill, the opposite, really. Clara took a breath. I'm pregnant. About 2 months along, Dr. Patterson thinks. The silence that followed felt endless. Ethan's face went through a series of emotions too quick to catalog. Shock, confusion, something that might have been fear, and then finally a slow dawning joy that transformed his features. A baby. His voice was barely above a whisper. We're having a baby? We are. I know it wasn't planned, and if you're not ready, or if this changes things... Ethan cut her off with a kiss that stole her breath, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around while she laughed and clung to his shoulders. When he finally set her down, his eyes were bright with tears. Changes things? Clara, this is the best news I've had in years. A baby. Our baby. His hand came to rest on her stomach, gentle and reverent. You've given me so much already, a real marriage, a mother for my boys, hope for the future. And now this? I don't have words for how happy you've made me. Relief flooded through Clara so intensely her knees went weak. You're really happy about this? Happier than I knew how to be. Ethan pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. When Sarah was carrying the boys, those were some of the best months of my life. Getting to experience that again. With you? It's more than I ever thought I'd have. They stood together by the rushing creek, holding each other as the Montana sun warmed their backs and the prairie stretched endless around them. Clara felt the last of her fears dissolve, replaced by a contentment so deep it was almost painful in its intensity. We should tell the boys, she said eventually. Tonight at dinner, let's make it special. Ethan's smile was pure mischief. Ben's been asking for a dog. We'll tell him he's getting a baby sibling instead and see what he says. Ethan Hale, that's terrible. But funny, he kissed her forehead. Come on, we've got planning to do. If we're bringing a baby into this family, we need to make sure everything's ready. Dinner that evening was Clara's best effort. Roasted chicken with vegetables from the root cellar, fresh bread, and berry pie made with preserves Mrs. Henderson had brought. The boys attacked their plates with typical enthusiasm, while Ethan and Clara exchanged meaningful looks across the table. Finally, when the meal was nearly finished, Ethan cleared his throat. Boys, your ma and I have some news to share. Ben looked up immediately, alert to the serious tone. What kind of news? Good or bad? Good, Clara assured him. Very good. But it's going to mean some changes around here. Sam bounced in his seat. Are we getting a dog? Please say we're getting a dog. Not a dog, Ethan said, fighting a smile. Something better. You're going to be big brothers. The silence that followed was profound. Both boys stared at their parents with identical expressions of shock. You mean Ma's having a baby? Ben finally managed. I am, Clara confirmed, her hand moving to her stomach. Sometime in the fall, you'll have a new brother or sister. Sam's face split into the widest grin Clara had ever seen. He launched himself from his chair and threw his arms around her. A baby! A real baby! Can I help take care of it? Can I teach it things? Will it be a boy or a girl? When exactly is it coming? Can I... Sam, breathe, Clara laughed, hugging him back. Yes, you can help. We'll all help. That's what families do. She looked at Ben, who hadn't moved, his face unreadable. Clara's heart clenched. Was he upset? Feeling replaced? She should have anticipated this, should have prepared better. Ben? Ethan said quietly. What are you thinking, son? Ben stood slowly and walked around the table to Clara. For a long moment he just looked at her, his young face serious and thoughtful. Then he placed his hand very gently on her stomach. I'm going to be the best big brother, he said solemnly. I'm going to teach this baby everything. How to ride, how to read, how to be brave like Ma. And I'm going to protect them, just like Pa protects all of us. He looked up at Clara, his eyes suspiciously bright. Thank you for giving us a real family again, for making Pa happy, for loving us even though we're not really your kids. Clara's tears spilled over. She pulled Ben into her arms, holding him tight. You are my kids. Blood doesn't make a family, Ben. Love does. And I love you and Sam just as much as I'll love this baby. That will never change. Ben buried his face in her shoulder, his thin frame shaking slightly. I love you too, Ma. So much. Sam piled on, wrapping his arms around both of them, and then Ethan was there too, his strong arms encircling all of them in a group embrace that felt like the most perfect thing in the world. We're a family, Sam declared happily. A real, actual family. We always were, Ethan said, from the moment your Ma agreed to marry me. But now we're growing, and that's something worth celebrating. The celebration turned into an impromptu planning session, with both boys full of ideas about names and whether the baby should have the room next to theirs or down the hall, and whether they'd need a bigger table for family dinners. We have months to figure all that out, Clara reminded them, though she was touched by their enthusiasm. For now, let's just focus on getting ready slowly. There's no rush. But over the following weeks, it became clear that the boys had other ideas. Ben started building a cradle in the barn with Jack's help, working on it every afternoon with intense concentration. Sam collected soft things, blankets, fleece, even his own favorite stuffed rabbit, insisting the baby would need them. The Valley women descended with advice and hand-me-down baby clothes and strong opinions about everything from diet to exercise to whether Clara should be riding dancer in her condition. Don't let them bully you, Mrs. Patterson advised during one of Clara's checkups. Every woman and every pregnancy is different. You're healthy and strong. Trust your body. Clara tried to follow that advice, though it was difficult when Mrs. Yates insisted she should be on bed rest, and Mrs. Henderson countered that fresh air and moderate activity were essential. She compromised by continuing her normal routine, but avoiding heavy lifting and cutting back on the more strenuous ranch work. Ethan, for his part, became almost comically protective. He hovered whenever Clara climbed stairs, insisted she rest every afternoon, and nearly had a heart attack when he found her moving furniture to prepare the nursery. What are you doing? He demanded, taking the chair from her hands. You shouldn't be lifting things. It's a chair, Ethan, not a boulder. I'm pregnant, not made of glass. You're carrying our child. I'm allowed to be concerned. Clara softened, touching his cheek. I know, and I love you for it. But I also need you to trust that I know my own limits. If something feels wrong, I'll stop. I promise. He sighed and pulled her into his arms, careful even in that. I just want you both to be safe. I can't lose you, Clara. Not now, not ever. You won't, she assured him. I'm tougher than I look, remember? I walked 7 miles through a blizzard. Don't remind me. That still gives me nightmares. As spring deepened into early summer, preparations for the baby continued alongside the usual ranch work. The calves grew stronger, the herd multiplied, and the ranch's financial situation improved steadily. Ethan hired 2 more hands to help with the increased workload, good men who treated Clara with respect and the boys with rough affection. But there was still one thing Clara wanted to do, something that felt important, even though she couldn't quite articulate why. I want to renew our vows, she told Ethan one evening as they sat on the porch watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. Have a real ceremony with the boys there and the community, something that celebrates what we've actually become instead of what we started as. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Because you want to replace the memory of our first wedding? No. Because I want to honor it. Clara took his hand. Our first wedding was about survival and necessity. It was the right choice for the right reasons, and I'll never regret it. But now it's about love. And I want to stand in front of everyone and choose you again, not because I have to, but because there's nowhere else I'd rather be. Understanding dawned in Ethan's eyes. A celebration of choice over necessity. Exactly. Then let's do it. He raised her hand to his lips. But I have a condition. What's that? I get to plan it. You're carrying our child and managing this household and teaching the boys. Let me do this for you, for us. Clara agreed, curious about what he had in mind, but willing to trust him. And trust was rewarded when, 3 weeks later, Ethan announced that everything was ready for the ceremony he'd planned. It was nothing like their first wedding. For one thing, it was outdoors, in the meadow behind the house where wildflowers grew in riotous profusion. For another, half the valley seemed to have turned out for it. Neighboring ranchers and their families. The town women who'd become Clara's friends, even Sheriff Morrison and his deputies. Someone had built an arch decorated with flowers and white ribbons. Chairs were arranged in neat rows, and a long table groaned under the weight of food that people had brought. It looked less like a wedding and more like a celebration, which Clara supposed was exactly the point. She dressed in a new gown that Mrs. Henderson and several other women had sewn for her, soft blue cotton that accommodated her growing belly and made her feel beautiful for the first time in months. Her hair was pinned up with wildflowers, and she carried a simple bouquet of prairie roses. Ben and Sam, scrubbed clean and wearing their Sunday best, walked her down the makeshift aisle while Reverend Mitchell beamed from beneath the flower arch. But it was Ethan who took her breath away. He stood tall and handsome in a new suit, his hair trimmed and his eyes shining with emotion as he watched her approach. This was so different from their first wedding. No desperate transaction, no practical arrangement, just two people who'd found love in the most unexpected circumstances choosing to celebrate it publicly. When she reached him, Ethan took both her hands in his. "Clara," he said, his voice carrying to the assembled crowd, but his eyes focused only on her. "6 months ago, I offered you a marriage of convenience. I thought I was being practical, solving problems for both of us. But you saw past the transaction to the possibility. You believed we could build something real, even when I was too scared to admit I wanted the same thing." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "You've given me back my life," Ethan continued. "You've given my sons a mother who loves them fiercely and fights for them without hesitation. You've given this ranch a heart again, filled our home with laughter and warmth and purpose. And you've given me love when I thought I was done with loving. For all of that, for being brave and stubborn and refusing to give up on us even when it was hard, I thank you." He released one of her hands to pull something from his pocket, a ring, more elaborate than the simple gold band she wore, with a small diamond that caught the sunlight. "This was my grandmother's," Ethan said softly. "It's been in my family for 3 generations, waiting for the right woman. I want you to have it, Clara. Not as payment or obligation, but as a symbol of how much you mean to me. How much you'll always mean." Clara extended her trembling hand and let him slide the ring onto her finger beside her wedding band. It fit perfectly, the diamond winking in the light. "My turn," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Ethan, when I walked to your gate that day, I was desperate and terrified and convinced I was going to die in the snow. You saved my life, but you gave me so much more than that. You gave me a chance to prove myself. You trusted me with your children, your home, your heart. You saw potential in me when I could barely see it in myself." She squeezed his hands. "You've taught me what real partnership looks like. You've shown me that love doesn't have to be easy to be real, that sometimes the strongest bonds are forged in difficulty, in danger, and mutual survival. You've made me a mother, a wife, a valued member of this community. You've given me a home in every sense of the word." Clara reached into her own pocket and pulled out a gift she'd commissioned from the blacksmith in town, a pocket watch engraved with the date of their first wedding and the words, "From necessity to choice, from choice to love." "I can't give you rings or grand gestures," Clara said, "but I can give you this promise. I will stand beside you every day of our lives. I will love your sons as my own. I will work with you to build this ranch into something our children and grandchildren will be proud of. And I will never, ever stop choosing you, Ethan Hale. Every morning, every day, for the rest of my life." Ethan's hands shook slightly as he took the watch, opened it, and read the inscription. When he looked up, tears tracked freely down his weathered cheeks. "I love you," he said simply, "more than words can say." "I love you too, so very much." Reverend Mitchell stepped forward, beaming. "I don't think we need the traditional vows at this point. These two have said everything that matters. So by the power vested in me and witnessed by this community that has watched you build something beautiful from difficult beginnings, I confirm what has already been made true through your actions and your love. You are husband and wife, partners in every sense. May your union be blessed with many years of happiness." The crowd erupted in cheers as Ethan pulled Clara into his arms and kissed her thoroughly, not the chaste peck from their first ceremony, but a deep, passionate kiss that spoke of love earned and promises kept. Ben and Sam rushed forward, wrapping their arms around both adults in an enthusiastic group hug that nearly knocked everyone over. The crowd laughed and applauded, and someone started playing a fiddle, and suddenly the ceremony transformed into a full celebration with dancing and food and an overwhelming outpouring of community support. Clara found herself pulled from person to person, accepting congratulations and well wishes and advice about the coming baby. Mrs. Henderson hugged her tightly. "I'm sorry we were so cold to you at first," she said. "We didn't understand. But watching you and Ethan together, seeing what you've built with those boys, Clara, you've shown us all what real strength looks like. This valley is better for having you in it." "Thank you," Clara managed, overwhelmed. "That means more than you know." As the sun set and lanterns were lit, Ethan found Clara and pulled her away from the crowd to a quiet spot at the edge of the meadow. "Happy?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind and resting his hands on her growing belly. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Clara admitted. 6 months ago, I thought my life was over. Now look at me. Married to a wonderful man, mother to 2 amazing boys, with a baby on the way, and a community that actually values me. It's almost too much." "It's exactly enough," Ethan corrected. "It's what you deserve. What we all deserve." He turned her in his arms so they were face to face. "I have one more surprise for you. Ethan, you've already done too much. Just come with me." He led her back to the house, to his study where he'd been spending extra time recently on some project he'd refused to explain. Inside, spread across his desk, were official-looking documents. "I've been working with a lawyer in town," Ethan explained, "getting everything in order for when the baby comes. The ranch will be split equally between all the children, Ben, Sam, and the new baby. And I've established a trust in your name, Clara. Money that's yours alone that no one can touch, even if something happens to me. You'll never be dependent or vulnerable again." Clara stared at the documents, at the proof of his commitment to her security and independence. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did. I know what it's like to have nothing, Clara. So do you. I won't have you or our children ever facing that again." He gathered the papers and set them aside. "Everything I have, everything I am, it's yours. Not because you married me out of desperation, but because you've earned it 1,000 times over through your love and courage and unwavering commitment to this family." Clara couldn't speak past the lump in her throat, so she showed him how she felt instead, kissing him with all the love and gratitude and joy that filled her heart to bursting. They made their way back to the celebration hand in hand, arriving just in time to see Ben and Sam organizing the younger children into some kind of game that involved a great deal of running and shouting. The sight of them, happy, healthy, secure, made Clara's heart swell. This was her family. Not the one she'd been born into, which tragedy had stolen too soon. Not the one she'd dreamed of as a young girl, all romance and fantasy, but the one she'd fought for, worked for, built with her own hands and heart, and refusal to give up. As autumn painted the prairie in shades of gold and red, Clara's pregnancy advanced. She grew larger and more uncomfortable, but also more joyful, watching her body change to accommodate new life. The boys were endlessly fascinated, asking questions that ranged from practical to absurd, and Ethan treated her like she was made of precious glass. The baby came on a crisp October morning, just as the first frost touched the ground. Dr. Patterson and Mrs. Henderson attended the birth, while Ethan paced holes in the floor downstairs, and the boys tried to distract him with card games. It was long and difficult, hours of pain that had Clara questioning every choice she'd ever made. But when she finally heard the baby's first cry and felt the small, warm weight placed on her chest, everything else fell away. "A girl," Dr. Patterson announced with satisfaction. "Healthy lungs on this one. She's perfect, Clara." "A daughter." Clara stared down at the tiny face, the wisp of dark hair, the impossibly small fingers that wrapped around her own, and felt love slam into her with physical force. This was her child, hers and Ethan's, the living proof of everything they'd built together. "Let me bring in the family," Mrs. Henderson said gently, and moments later Ethan was there, his face awestruck as he looked at his daughter for the first time. "She's beautiful," he breathed, "just like her mother." Ben and Sam crowded in, eyes huge as they stared at their new sister. "She's so tiny," Sam whispered. "Are you sure she's supposed to be that small?" "All babies are small at first," Clara assured him. "She'll grow, and you two will help teach her everything she needs to know." "What are we going to name her?" Ben asked. Clara and Ethan exchanged glances. They discussed names extensively, but hadn't quite settled on one. "What do you think of Hope?" Clara suggested softly. "Because she represents all our hopes for the future, and because hope is what brought us all together." "Hope Sarah Hale," Ethan added, his voice rough with emotion, "to honor both the woman who gave me my first family and the quality that gave me my second." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "It's perfect." And it was. Baby Hope, with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin and two doting older brothers, and a community ready to welcome her, was the perfect completion to a family forged in hardship and tempered by love. Winter came again to Montana, but this time Clara faced it with joy instead of desperation. The ranch was secure, the family was whole, and every morning she woke grateful for the choices that had led her here. Sometimes, when the wind howled and the snow fell heavy, she thought about that terrified woman who'd collapsed at an iron gate, half frozen and completely desperate. She thought about how close she'd come to giving up, to letting the cold take her rather than fighting for one more day. And she thanked that woman for her stubborn refusal to quit, because without it, none of this, not the love, not the family, not the home she'd built, would exist. On a bright spring morning, a year later, Clara stood on the porch with Hope on her hip, watching Ethan work with the boys on breaking a new horse. The prairie stretched endless around them, wild and beautiful and harsh and home. "You did good, Ma," Ben said, appearing at her elbow. He was almost as tall as she was now, shooting up like a weed. "Coming here, staying, becoming part of us." "You all did good too," Clara replied, taking a chance on a desperate stranger, giving her a place to belong. "We're family," Sam piped up from her other side. "That's what families do." And he was right. Family wasn't just blood. It wasn't just romance or convenience or legal contracts. It was choice, renewed every day through actions and commitment and love. It was walking through blizzards for each other. It was defending your home when danger came. It was opening your heart even when it scared you, even when loss had taught you how much love could hurt. It was this, standing together on a Montana porch, watching the world wake to spring, knowing you'd built something real and lasting from the most unlikely beginnings. Clara Hale had come to this ranch with nothing but desperation and a carpetbag. She'd gained everything that mattered, love, family, home, and the absolute certainty that she'd finally found where she belonged. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers and new grass. Hope gurgled happily in her arms. The boys raced off to help their father, their laughter ringing across the prairie. And Clara smiled, her heart full to overflowing, and knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Home.